Southern Poverty Law Center and the ADL, who controls speech in the entire Western world, came out with a new statement or statements openly saying that if you talk about world government or world IDs or world forced injections, you are anti-Semitic and you should be censored, you should be shut down. In fact, if you show the different world government summits being held by the G20 and by the Davos group, they will actually say it is not real and you are a hateful, bad person. And they admit that the Southern Poverty Law Center and ADL take direct orders from the UN. The head of the UN Information Bureau bragged a few weeks ago that they control the internet and what you can and cannot say. And the head of the European Union just came out a few weeks ago and said, oh, we'll just arrest Elon Musk. We'll just fine him. You're not going to have free speech anymore. These are really the good guys, aren't they? What tyrants? So the ultimate brainwashing, the ultimate gaslighting as they announce all this tyranny. Then they say, but we can't talk about it, doesn't exist, while it publicly exists. So here it is, breaking. G20 leaders issued joint declaration promoting global health passport to facilitate international travel, a world ID to buy, sell, and travel even outside your house. The social credit score, you will not leave 1/2 foot out of your home unless you're authorized to. G20 pushes vaccine passports for all future international travel as a beginning, but they go on in their own document to announce it'll be a domestic passport, just like you saw in New Zealand and Australia and now in Italy. Biden stands behind pledge for a global vaccine passport system. Global government, mark of the beast, in your face. Viva Fry, the Canadian lawyer, says, ever so discreetly buried in item 23 of the G20 Bali Leadership's Declaration, details Alex Jones was right. And then right here, they've got the statement about how they are establishing this. So we're going to be reading over all of that here today. It dovetails with all this news. Canadian bank launches credit cards linked to carbon emissions. So do European Union banks, Australian banks, U.S. banks, and then soon it will be mandatory, surveilling and controlling everything you do. Then, of course, we have the FBI director getting grilled on declaring people that talk about such things as terrorists and censoring them, even though it's all out in the open. Just like we've seen in Europe and Australia and Canada, now here in the U.S. and in Brazil, when you protest stolen elections, that's one of the big no-nos that Biden said last year will be illegal, not in law, but by executive order in their new terrorism directive, that if you question elections, you will be censored, you will then have your bank account taken, and then you will be sent, of course, to jail. They've now built emergency centers all over the world under UN directives that anyone that does not submit to forced injections and lockdowns in the future will be sent to these centers. They have now admitted in Canada and in Australia, but they're also setting them up here, that and the UN is directing it again, that officially the camps aren't just for people they claim have COVID with their fake PCR test, but now it's for anybody protesting the future lockdowns as they gear up for their next big push, while saying they want amnesty from us and for us to not sue them or organize into groups that are saying no so they can sucker punch us again. Far left Brazilian Supreme Court orders banks to block funds of businessmen who supported the protest in mass democracy rallies. You can't have that. We're the liberals. We'll take your bank account. And it just goes on from there. What the cashless society, central bank digital currencies really mean, the holy grail of enslavement and control. We're going to lay it all out on this live transmission, Infowars.com. Well, people aren't going to have to wait and see if everything I've talked about is going to come true or not. Now the dominoes of tyranny are falling very quickly against humanity. And the real private corporate government of the world, the Davos group, that openly now is in command of the UN and of the G20 and of world policy illegally. It's a kleptocratic technocracy in their own words. Even Bloomberg a few years ago said we need a dictatorship of the technocrats. And that's exactly what we see as Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates up there lecturing world leaders who they prepared and trained and coddled and funded into power to now openly brag about their power over all of us and what their policies are going to be, taking away red meat, dissolving borders, breaking up the traditional family, forcing deadly shots on you, sexualizing your children. That's where we are right now, ladies and gentlemen. They told you a few years ago, by 2030, you'll own nothing and have no privacy, and that life has never been better. They say all these openly dystopic things because at some point they have to emerge with their attack, emerge with their totalitarian takeover. So we're going again from the beta exercise mode into the actual New World Order control grid, whose end game is at least 90% forced depopulation, run by a bunch of psychotic, mad scientists. We're going to be laying it all out here today. G20 pushes vaccine passports for all future international travel. When you read the fine print, it's during lockdowns to leave your house or go to the grocery store. Biden stands behind pledge to create global vaccine passport system. We're going to be looking at this very, very closely because, like I told you yesterday, it's not coming, it's here. And how will they precipitate the initiation of this program? We're going to lay that out coming up at the bottom of the hour. Couldn't be a more important subject to understand the future and how everything in the future is going to be stopping this program from going into place, or if it gets into place, everything is going to be about getting us out of it. And it'll be much harder to get out of it than it will be to stop it. But don't you have a feeling they're going to get it in place? I mean, the Bible says they are, but then things get really bad and people finally wake up. What's it going to take? They've already hit us with a soft kill weapon. They've already killed 20 million people with the poison shots conservatively that forms prion blood clots, very similar to what causes spongiform encephalopathy or mad cow disease. I've had top scientists on major studies, infertility off the charts, 82% increase in miscarriages in women that have taken the Pfizer or Moderna shot. That's just the hors d'oeuvre. That's just the prelude. That's just the opening. That's just the opening salvo, ladies and gentlemen, in this whole operation. And so the good news is we're learning that they've captured our governments. We're learning they've gotten control of our societies and our civilizations. And just in the process of learning about their operations, it's the beginning of the end, because they are the ones creating the crises, exacerbating the crises, using natural crises to get more control. They're the ones that say they hate humanity. They're the ones that say we're worthless and scum and should step aside for them to control the future. And so we have to identify them as the monsters, as the totalitarians, as the control freaks, and their minions as fools who have, as mercenaries, some wittingly, some unwittingly, have gone along with their own destruction. Let's go ahead and air back to back some of these really amazing interchanges that happened. The first one is clip 10, Senator Josh Hawley, who has a lot of courage, grilling DHS Secretary Mayorkas, and then he also then grills and destroys FBI Director Christopher Wray. So let's go ahead and air those clips back to back. And then we're going to play Jim Jordan on the same main central subject of before we can take America back and have free and fair elections and control our borders and stop the FTX crime rings, we're going to have to get control of our Justice Department and our justice system that's been weaponized against us. Here's some of what transpired in hearings yesterday.
I think the last time that I got to visit with you was back in August 4th of this year. You were at the Senate Judiciary Committee. You remember that, I assume. We had to cut that hearing short. We're supposed to do 2 rounds of questions. You said you had to be somewhere, so we cut it short. Republicans were not able to ask a second round as we had been informed we would. The press reported shortly thereafter that the reason that the hearing had to be cut short is because you were flying on a Gulfstream jet for a personal vacation in the Adirondacks. Please tell me that's not accurate.
Senator, the hearing was not cut short from my experience. We had agreed beforehand on the time and length of it, and I was very surprised to find that the Any Mountain Committee was surprised. As to how I fly, I am required, not only permitted, but required to fly on an FBI plane wherever I go.
So you were going on vacation?
I was, yes.
So you left a statutorily required oversight hearing in order to go on a personal vacation in the Adirondacks?
I took a flight to go visit my family, as had been previously arranged in conjunction with the leadership of the committee.
The ranking member, Chuck Grassley, asked you during the hearing, he said, I assume you must have other business. You said, yes. He then said, if you have a business trip, you've got your own plane, can't it wait a while? He then said, Chuck Grassley, we only just heard half an hour ago that now you have to leave. We were going to have a 7-minute round followed by a 3-minute round. I've got 7 people on my side of the aisle, that included me, who are waiting for this additional round. Is there any reason we can't accommodate them for 21 minutes? And you said you had a plane to catch. You had somewhere to go. And now we find out it was for vacation?
The reference to other business was not a reference to that day. It was a reference to the following week where Senator Grassley and I were going to see each other in Iowa when I had other business in Iowa, and I did in fact see him then.
So wait, you had to leave the hearing early because you're going to see him later in Iowa in a week?
No, I had to leave when I said I was going to have to leave, as had been previously organized with the leadership of the committee.
You left an oversight hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee required by statute so you could vacation with your family. I find that absolutely unbelievable and frankly indefensible. Now,
Senator Hawley, you're recognized for your questions.
thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks again to the witnesses for being here. Mr. Secretary, nice to see you. I didn't get to visit with you last time, so let's start with you. I think my colleagues have established, given what we're seeing on the southern border, the massive increase in illegality there, that's clearly not a priority for your agency. So let's talk about what appears to be, and that is spying on Americans and censoring their speech. You have turned your agency into a censorship machine. Now, you said earlier this year that you disbanded the Disinformation Governance Board, which I thought was totally unconstitutional, but that turns out to be, at best, misleading. That's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what you're doing. Your own quadrennial review, which was just reported in the press, says that disinformation is going to be the new focus at DHS. The Quad Review says that DHS plans to target, I'm quoting now, inaccurate information domestically on a wide array of subjects, including, quoting, the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic, the efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines, racial justice, U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the nature of U.S. support for Ukraine. This is what
this is so important. Hit pause. I'm going to come back and play the rest of the clip. In fact, I'm going to go back to the beginning of it. Josh Hawley should be the next president, quite frankly. Who else is bringing up the illegal federal government spying with the ADL and other groups on you and saying their main focus isn't the border, isn't crime, isn't MS-13, isn't fentanyl, isn't massive child kidnapping and murder going on? Their main focus is disinformation and SJW, critical race theory crap. And let me explain something. I have DHS on my ass behind the scenes. So they're coming after the American people. This is 101 tyranny. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we know that we're repeating history in a very dangerous way right now. If you remember, Richard Nixon had 123 names, if memory serves, in his safe that he was considering, and got caught on some of the recordings that he made of himself in the White House, sicking the IRS on 120-something people. He never did it, but it was one of the reasons they were pushing to remove him from office, and he stepped down. Now, under Barack Hussein Obama, they targeted over 100,000 conservatives and Christian and pro-gun groups with audits and with taking away their 501c3 and other designations for tax exempt. And they refused, in the 8 years of Obama, all but a half dozen requests for 501c3s and other tax-exempt designations. So they denied the law and the rights and the benefits of citizens. They harassed over 100,000 people. They indicted and imprisoned thousands of people politically. Tea Party groups, you name it. We were targeted at the time. I didn't make a big deal about it. I know I'm going to be under attack. I understand that. You have to understand, it was the Department of Homeland Security that listed us 4 years ago as a hate group that got us debanked and made our credit card rates go up. And made major software companies refuse to do business with us. Literally like Hitler did with the Jews, taking their rights to commerce and to business away. In the first few years he got into office. So this is a program of control. The reason I raised that, on an order of magnitude of 1 to a million, what Nixon did was about a 15, what Obama did was about a 200, and what the third administration of Obama and the deep state's doing is a 950 on a chart of 1,000. I mean, it's pedal to the metal, almost as bad as it could get. Where the official policy of anti-terrorism directive since June of last year is questioning elections, questioning open borders, questioning lockdowns or forced injections, or now we learn in the new documents, questioning the Afghan withdrawal, now questioning the proxy war in Ukraine. These policy groups, CFR and ADL, get together and they decide what's the new group we're going to outlaw. That's the point. At first they came for this group, then they came for that group. I did nothing. I wasn't in that group. Finally, when they came for me, there was nobody left. They're doing it. And it should have been the #1 story in the country. For 3 weeks, I have hammered and hammered and hammered the DHS documents they confirm are real, where they say their main mission is taking on white supremacists that they define as anybody that questions anything they're doing. And the things I just listed. Any populist movement, any anti-war movement, any movement wants to control the border, any movement questions the election, you're a terrorist. And almost zero news coverage of the biggest story ever that they were secretly saying it's their main mission, but that it had to be kept from the public. That's in the documents. If you remember when it first broke 3 weeks ago, I spent every show for a full week harping on it, hoping it would break into the news, and it maybe got picked up on Tucker Carlson, a few other shows, and finally Senator Hawley has Mayorkas in front of him, DHS, and the majority of their 60,000 agents, not there to deal with crime or drugs or murder or kidnapping or human smuggling, but to deal with the American people secretly with an entire leftist agenda. So you heard last year how they wanted to sick the FBI and did on parents protesting critical race theory and transgenderism pedo garbage at the public schools peacefully. Sicking the FBI and other federal agencies on moms and dads at the PTA at the school board meeting. And then now we learn it's everybody they're coming after. And their plan is debanking with a ID that you use to get on the internet or have a job or travel outside your house, which Biden says is his main priority. They're putting the authoritarian, totalitarian chains on us right now. So Nixon's a 15. Obama's a 500 on the scale. And now what they're doing is a 950. And remember, 1,000's the top. It's just arresting all of us and putting us in death camps. I mean, that's where this always leads. That's the process. And guess what? They've built all these camps around the world. UN directed for anybody that doesn't go along with the new forced inoculations and new lockdowns coming. They've now announced, oh, guess what? Political dissidents that don't go along, like a truck rally in Canada or a truck rally in Brazil, you'll have your bank accounts taken and your leaders are going to be thrown in jail for demonstrating. That's Tiananmen Square level oppression and control. That's 1,000. See, Tiananmen Square is 1,000. Tanks running over people in death camps. They've now got us administratively with the gun locked, loaded, the trigger off, finger on the trigger at a 950. Now all that's left is to pull the frickin' trigger. They've already pulled it on a lot of us. So here is Josh Hawley talking to Mayorkas about this criminal activity they're involved in.
Senator Hawley, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks again to the witnesses for being here. Mr. Secretary, nice to see you. I didn't get to visit with you last time, so let's start with you. I think my colleagues have established, given what we're seeing on the southern border, the massive increase in illegality there, that's clearly not a priority for your agency. So let's talk about what appears to be, and that is spying on Americans and censoring their speech. You have turned your agency into a censorship machine. Now, you said earlier this year that you disbanded the Disinformation Governance Board, which I thought was totally unconstitutional, but that turns out to be, at best, misleading. That's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what you're doing. Your own quadrennial review, which was just reported in the press, says that disinformation is going to be the new focus at DHS. The Quad Review says that DHS plans to target, I'm quoting now, inaccurate information domestically on a wide array of subjects, including, quoting, the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic, the efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines, racial justice, U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the nature of U.S. support for Ukraine. This is what you're devoting your agency's resources to. So I guess my first question is an American citizen who criticizes COVID mandates now to be treated as a domestic terrorist?
Of course not, and I'd like to say three things since you have three inaccuracies in the question you posed to me. Number one, border security is a priority of ours. Number two, the department does not censor speech. And number three, we did not publish a quadrennial review.
Does it exist, the quadrennial review?
I believe it is being worked on.
Well, it's been published in the media. Will you make it public?
When it is final, it will be public.
You see, we got the secret document 3 weeks ago. It's real. But I don't need to read their documents. The key to intelligence is observing in the field what's happening. If I didn't have these documents, I'd know. That's how I told you 25 years ago it was coming. But it ain't coming no more. Baby, it's here. It's here. And they are mobilized against us. All that's left is the false flags, the power outages, and they're going to start the Civil War. They want war, folks. We don't want it, but it's coming. These people are criminals. They work for Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates. We'll be right back. So, publicly and in internal documents, DHS's main mission is spying on and surveilling everything the American people say, and then working with big tech, private corporations, major banks like JP Morgan Chase is in the documents, to harass and debank and stalk and criminally racketeer against us. And I've been explaining this is all run by DHS and CIA for years. We have the documents. So why do they gaslight like this? It's very simple. If you're getting ready for a world ID, you're getting ready for controlled power outages, you're getting ready to try to ban meat, you're getting ready to try to break up families, you're getting ready to bring in these control grids, you're getting ready to launch your public spy force and start disappearing people, while you're building it and training people and preparing the pretext to launch it, you don't want opposition to know about it or form larger opposition against it. You want to catch people flat-footed. So everything we do here is to make sure you're not caught flat-footed. Most people that actually wake up that are, let's just say, in the power structure, join evil when they learn this is going on because they get scared. Most people in the power structure don't even know how things work. They just go along to get along. But I thought decades ago when I'd wake people up that it would only have positive effects. Actually, I've learned, sadly, by talking to a lot of them off record, that I woke up people in high-power positions to become even more powerful using our knowledge of the enemy to actually excel to the heights of it, because the top people in it don't teach their minions all the different tricks and secrets. So it's been overall positive what we do, but I never imagined that a large portion of people that wake up to this would then say, wow, that's a great business plan. I'm going to join with evil. But really, doesn't that show what history documents? But what we do know is that anyone that serves evil when you're entering the final phase of a real evil takeover, a real spasm, a real blooming of corruption will be destroyed in the process, and that serving evil when it goes into these orgies of death and theft and corruption is the most dangerous place to be. The most dangerous place to be where we're at societally is on evil's side. And evil is going to double down and quadruple down and quintuple down, trying to keep power and control while acting invincible, acting imperious, filled with their hubris, their chutzpah, their bravada, their, what's the right word for it? Their conceited attitudes. Their conceit for everyone is really their shield for their weakness. So they're in the end of their life cycle, politically, culturally. They're in the end of their big run. Like a big fish running out on a line. The end of the line is now about to happen and starting to happen, and they're exhausted. And so they're going to double down with their arrogance, double down with their bravada, double down with their hiding in plain sight, their con game. Because we've been here, you've been here exposing their larger plan, knowing it was coming. And so basically everybody now knows this was coming. Now they see it happening. And a lot of people will say, well, it's not going to be that bad. Let's see how bad it is. And when you see how bad it is, even though you serve the system, then you're going to realize for self-preservation that the only thing you can do is fight. The only thing you can do is say no to this evil. And that's our job, and that's why InfoWars, thanks to your support, your word of mouth, and your prayer, has been undoubtedly, hands down, the most valuable player on Team Freedom versus Team Demon. All glory to God, who, working through you, did this. So all glory to you, the viewers and listeners. And I mean that. You need it to burn into your mind. Burn into your psyche, burn into your very soul how important you are and how recognizing evil and resisting it, and more importantly, recognizing God's supremacy is the key to this test we're all experiencing. But yes, they are officially saying in Homeland Security documents, questioning lockdowns, open borders, forced injections, pedophile time, critical race theory, Afghan withdrawal, Ukrainian war, any of this. If you care, if you're good, they're saying we're the bad guys and we're organizing the law enforcement and judicial and legislative systems against you. But the crack in the dam starts with us. Here's an example of why this operation is so precious. The enemy knows this. I want you to know it. We were the first to break because Rob Dew was ferreting around and poking around that FTX was involved running the poison shot rollout and suppressing any treatments that actually protected people and therapeutics. Now that's all over the news. That story actually hit big and is everywhere now. We broke that. We did that. You, the audience, did that. Big victory this week. I would have thought 3 weeks ago when I harped on it and harped on it and harped on it, it'd be a bigger deal that more Homeland Security documents confirming the public statements and documents that they're literally preparing what can only be described as a communist Chinese or Hitlerian style police force against the American people. And finally, it's starting to break. Finally, it's starting to come out. Another great example of the gaslighting is Chucky Schumer saying over and over again, and Democrats saying, white people are bad, we need to get rid of white people, and white people shouldn't have children, and we're going to bring in foreigners to replace the white people, and here's our UN plan, replacement migration. We go, man, that's really racist and terrible and a horrible thing to be like that. We don't support that. And they go, it doesn't exist. The ADL said so. We're going to censor you or take your bank account. Then he goes out 2 days ago and gives a speech saying we got to replace the white people with foreigners who aren't white. So see, we've gone past the point of they were in beta. They're in operational now, and so they've got to admit what they're doing but put a spin on it. And because you and I and all of us were here exposing this, they're not going to get away with it. Now, I want to get into the whole rollout of the World ID and what the World ID will be implemented as, how it'll look, and how it'll be used, and the different phases of the rollout when we come back. And you ask, well, how do you know this? I mean, I see people all the time on Twitter and Instagram, people send me clips going, Jones has got to be CIA. You know, how does he know all this decades before? Did you know people in the military and people in the CIA are some of the most compartmentalized people out there that actually don't even have access to open source information or don't spend their time on it? 99% of what's going on, you can go out from open source and know it. And that's what's so frustrating. If I can learn all this stuff from the enemy's own admissions, you can know it too. They've said what their plan is in their councils. They've released all the different documents. We know. But people hear me predict it, and they think it's magic when it's not magic. If I go to a play, and they give me a program that tells me the 3 acts of the play, and they tell me who is playing who, I know that play, even if I've never seen it, by the program. And we have their playbook, we have their program, we have the script of what they're doing, and it is a very horrible place they're taking us. So I suggest we all grow up and admit the real playbook. How did I know Q wasn't real? Not against those that got into it. I get you wanted to think everything was fine. It isn't. Because I've studied history and Operation Trust that the communists ran in Russia. And how do I know so much? Because I actually study history and the enemy, and I know their playbook, and I know how to beat them. And we can do this together, but we're going to have to get very, very serious and very, very focused about it and understand what's real and what isn't. And you can see what's real. You can see what's happening. And there's no magic secret group in the government that's going to save you. I know you want to believe that. There are good people we can work with, but they're asking for you to stand up and step up, just like in V for Vendetta, when the police captain, the head investigator, is talking to V. He doesn't know he's talking to V. He says, why didn't you do this before? Why didn't you expose it before? And he said, because I didn't have somebody like you yet that was willing to talk to me. The change came from the grassroots through the system, not the other way around. That's why it's called grassroots. It grows up. Fire goes up. We'll be back. There are good people in the universe. In fact, there's more of us than there are evil. I know because I'm good. I love God. I have courage. And I was given insight and discernment and extreme determination, will, and strength by my Father who art in heaven. But I can't take on the enemy without you. That's why I've reached out to others that have been made black sheep and been demonized by the system and have joined forces with them. I have a lot of big projects that will be announced very, very soon. Some of them with folks like Andrew Tate, the most Googled man in the world. I want to get into the cashless society and how it's here and what it's going to mean and how we're going to fight it and what it's going to look like if we don't stop it here in just a moment. But we are now rolling out and working with Andrew Tate with a new supplement line. And I've gotten to know Tate good. He's come here several times. We've hung out quite a bit over the years. He's good friends with Paul Joseph Watson. He's 4-time world heavyweight and cruiserweight kickboxing champion. He's about to fight Jake Paul. It's gotten a lot of news. And he wants to be where the fight is. He wants to be with those that are being censored. So we're working with him on a new rollout at andrewtatepower.com. He came up with the term shop topgsubs.com, which is a great URL, but it's really andrewtatepower.com. And I asked him years ago, I said, you got to come up with some supplements. What do you take? And he said, I basically take these. These are the highest quality. I said, why don't you private label those with that big lab you get them from? These are lab made. He said, let's do it. And so finally, this has happened. Andrew Tate's operation, andrewtatepower.com. Feared opponent is the big testosterone and energy boost and male libido elevator. There's Unmatched, which again has a giant nutrient cognitive profile, is a super brain booster. And then Sheer is an incredible multivitamin boosting system. You can get them all discounted together or separately at andrewtatepower.com. I'm really excited to be working with the great Andrew Tate. Here's a little ad I put together.
Someone compared me to Socrates, which is a compliment, but he was vilified. He ended up poisoning himself in Athens. The charge against him, if you read about his poisoning and his arrest, they said he was corrupting the youth, but he wasn't corrupting them. He was inspiring them to challenge authority. He was inspiring them to think for themselves. When you have the youth, the masculine youth of the world, thinking for themselves, that's pretty scary to authority, because it's the masculine youth of the world that is, one, the revolutionaries, and two, also, that's the backbone of the slave force. If you need people to go die in a ditch in Afghanistan, you need them. More than you need the feminists and the liberals, you need the real men to go out there to purport and prop up a system. And if enough of these men stand in one place and say this is enough, that's when a revolution happens. So this is the most dangerous group of the demographic that the Matrix and the people are trying to control, and they have to have a narrative over, and that's why they're trying to weaken them in every regard.
As an all-star fighter, businessman, motivational speaker, and philanthropist, Andrew Tate has truly earned the title of Top G. But there's another title Andrew Tate holds that has enraged the globalist. He is consecutively the most Googled man in the world in the last 2 years. And that's because his message is about human and specifically male empowerment. Now, Andrew Tate is taking his fight to empower and supercharge men to the next level. Introducing Top G Supplements. We are proud to introduce and sponsor the Top G line of supplements by Andrew Tate and his crew. Now you have the chance to benefit in body, mind, and soul with the same supplements that Andrew Tate takes himself. Learn more about these amazing products at AndrewTatePower.com. AndrewTatePower.com, and discover the power of Andrew Tate's new supplements that are the highest quality on the market.
My life is a fight. What do you mean I'm not fighting a battle? I'm fighting a battle against the oppression of humankind.
All right, folks, get sheer, unmatched, and feared at AndrewTatePower.com. And we're running a total liquidation sale. A lot of these products won't be back until a few months into next year. X2, X3, Brave American Coffee, BioTrue Selenium, the highest quality. That's all sold out. DNA Force Plus, Vitamin Mineral Fusion, Body's Ultimate Turmeric Formula, Super Male Vitality, Super Female Vitality, Ultimate Krill Oil, it's the highest grade, Ultimate Fish Oil, highest grade, incredible. They're all 40 to 60% off with promo code 1776 at InfoWarsStore.com. InfoWarsStore.com, and that keeps us on the air. And look, I checked this morning. There's 15,000 T-shirts left. We had 100,000 T-shirts, over 120 designs. Some of them have been in our warehouse for years. Some of them hadn't. Some were bestsellers, some weren't. There's only 15,000 T-shirts left. The average T-shirt costs over $9 to produce because we use good quality fabric. A lot of our stuff's made in America. The rest is made in Latin America. It's all printed here. But the point is, most of these shirts, the average is almost $10 for a shirt. They're all $4.95 on what's left. That's below cost on average. Your last chance. These are all one-of-a-kind shirts. They'll never be made again. In the near future, we'll have like a shirt a month, and that's what we're going to do. But all these pieces of history, InfoWarsStore.com, to get those part of this mega blowout. Because we're going to do these blowout right through Christmas, but there won't be anything left by Christmas. So thank you all for the support. Get the best deals now and keep us on air. Because we're not funded by George Soros and the globalists. That's why we are doing everything we can to stay on air. We're very thankful to all of you. This is a major movement against tyranny. So please take action at InfoWarsStore.com. Okay, let me do this. I don't want to say I'm exhausted, because I'm not exhausted. I feel really good today. But when I make a claim like, I'm going to tell you what the cashless society is, I'm going to tell you how it's going to be implemented, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen if you go along with it, and I'm going to tell you how to stop it, there isn't anything more important than this temporarily on this planet. Getting right with God and being under God's protection and signing up with God is number one. But number two is this information I'm going to lay out. And so let me tell you who we got coming up today. We've got great filmmaker and author in his own right, and obviously the son of Oliver Stone, Sean Stone, with huge news and how to break the Matrix in the third hour, and Jade Iyer in the fourth hour. And I also want to try to take your phone calls. So I'm going to take phone calls at the bottom of the next hour, but I'm going to get in a Zen focus here. I can't do it in the next 5 minutes to break. And I'm going to come back next hour, and I'm going to lay out what they're doing, what's admitted, what the plan is, and what they say they're going to do once they implement this, which, by the way, they're very honest about it. And it's kill you and your family. So when I say that, it's not to shock you. This is as real as a heart attack. And Henry Kissinger trying to hire me in front of John Harmon 15 years ago is as real as a heart attack. I can only tell that story because the head of the Kissinger group said it in front of John, and it wasn't off record. I've had at least 10 other meetings, well, more than that, with Bilderberg Group attendees, with Bilderberg Group members. I've had meetings with representatives of Klaus Schwab, okay? Because I'll have those meetings with them and tell them they're going to lose and tell them they're going to be destroyed and they're insane and all the rest of it. They're so full of hubris, they don't listen. but they're a little bit scared at the end of the day. So I've had a lot of official meetings with them. I've had informal meetings. I've had run-ins with them. You've all heard the story of the first-class flight to be on The View 15, 16 years ago, and one of the biggest bank heads of the top 3 banks was there, and I was on a 3.5-hour flight with him from Austin to New York. Off-record meeting, but he said I could talk about the details, just don't say who he was. He told me what they were going to do. So, I mean, God has put me in this position. It's not Alex Jones doing this. I turned my life over to God a long time ago. And that doesn't mean I go around and tell you how holy I am and wear robes and sit there and do Gregorian chants and all the rest of it. I mean, I literally was drafted by the Holy Spirit, and I literally signed on, and I've been chosen because for whatever reason God thinks, and that's the only hope I've got, that I've got the mettle to take this. And I'll tell you, I'm not asking for more persecution, but persecution does nothing to me now. It's all God. It's the Holy Spirit. I wish I had the surety and the confidence now. The confidence I have now, I thought I had confidence 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago. I have beyond confidence now because I am with God and I'm on a mission, and it's bigger than me. It's infinity big. It's beyond infinity. And I know I'm on a mission to save innocents and on a mission to stop the destruction of our species. So I'm not just fully committed. I am energized. I am fulfilled. I am complete. But I can't do it without you, and I can't do it without your support. And that's why I'm so thankful to the listeners and viewers and the guests and the callers and this crew, because this is real. And good is real, just as evil is real. And we have proven this together. So I'm all about the mission. I'm all about the issues. I'm not about politics. I'm not about putting on some preacher act that I'm holier than thou. The truth is, I love women, and I love fist fights, and I love being a big old mean devil. But I refuse that, and I throw that off because I want to be close to God, and God chose me just like God's choosing you, because you've got what it takes to take on the evil. But to get that straight, I'm not saying I'm some holy man. I'm saying I'm an instrument of God to bring absolute resistance and destruction to the New World Order, and they know it. I am a sword forged for their defeat.
The film Soylent Green was made in 1973 and set in a dystopian world in the year 2022, where the government is secretly feeding the people food made of people. And the most pleasant experience one can have is state-assisted suicide. While government-run media pushes the idea of cannibalism, government-assisted suicide is officially now a thing in 2022. Before COVID, you could always count on modern medicine to keep you alive, so long as you had the money or insurance to pay for it. But these days, the hospitals seem more likely to liquidate you. And in Canada, they will help you kill yourself, even if you don't really want to die.
Amir Farsood has applied for medically assisted dying, known as MAID. He lives in constant agony due to a back injury, but has started the process for end of life because his rooming house is up for sale and he can't find anywhere else to live that he can afford. He barely survives on Ontario disability support payments, which are just over $1,200 a month. He doesn't want to die, but being homeless is not an option.
I know in my present health condition I would survive it anyway.
Farsood meets the criteria for MAID: physical suffering due to disability that cannot be relieved. His doctor, who knows Farsood's real reason for MAID is his fear of being homeless, signed off on the application in August. Farsood needs a second to do the same. There's a 90-day waiting period. He believes he could potentially access MAID in about a month.
I don't wish to be dead. Even with the pain, even with the meds, I still want to be here.
According to the Canadian government, they are getting several requests for suicide from children, who they refer to as mature minors. And they are seeking to amend the laws so that these children can be euthanized without their parents' consent. There are posts on social media that suggest this might be true, which shouldn't surprise anyone. The quality of life for Canadians is at an all-time low. And the motive for helping Canadians kill themselves is allegedly to save the government money.
They have saved $90 million. So, I mean, that's like 4 missiles flying to Ukraine. The government has infinite money for refugees and for, foreign aid and for, Democrat campaigns and for waging war in Ukraine, but no money to keep people alive. That's too expensive. This is the plan how they're going to save money. Sure, they're going to welcome in a couple million foreigners every year, put them on the free healthcare ticket. But average Canadians, sorry, it's time to suicide. It's time for death.
After 6,465 individuals committed suicide with the help of MAID, medical assistance in dying, the Canadian government saved $86.9 million, about $13,000 per person. That's what an individual's life is worth today in Canada. The economists running Canada concluded that the savings from MAID are so far negligible, but the suicide program should continue.
I mean, bullets don't cost that much. I mean, we could really be ramping this up. Maybe you could have people pay tickets. Like maybe this is a solution. Maybe in Canada, you pay like $10,000 and you get to kill somebody.
This is the predictable outcome of big government. When unnecessary jobs are created and given to lazy idiots, then economists and bureaucrats inevitably sort everything out. And they only see us as a resource, which turns civilization into a meat factory. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
So, I know the listeners of this broadcast already know about the World ID, the New World Order, the IMF, the World Bank, Cashless Society, the Social Credit Score, the carbon taxes, the Universal Basic Income, the Communist Chinese hell model. Hellscape is the blueprint for what they plan to bring forward against us. But I wanted to be specific about where we're at and where they're going to take us with this system and how we can stop it and say no to it. So, you have the UN, you have the big corporate mouthpiece, the World Economic Forum. For decades, they've said they want to use a viral scare. The Rockefeller documents, Operation Lockstep, the list goes on, to bring in a world medical ID that will really be the world ID that will have carbon controls, not just viral controls on where you can do, what you can do. You'll have digital money by region that'll be programmable. They'll decide where you can spend it, when you can spend it, how you can spend it. They can devalue it or upvalue it whenever they want. And it's directly tied and administered to the surveillance over it in live time by corporations, bureaucracies, and criminal think tanks like the ADL, who will then reward you or punish you off of your social behavior. And then they will program it and incentivize it to spend it with their companies, their businesses, their systems. Microcosm example is they tried to put in the last year synthetic, estrogen-laden, poisoned meat in the hamburgers, on the store shelves all over the Western world. It was unanimously, they lost billions of dollars, total failure, tastes horrible, makes you sick. Just one of these burgers that one of the big chains was selling had something like 20 plus times the amount of estrogen that an estrogen shot. Some of these people becoming trans don't just take pills, they take shots. It had 20 plus times what a estrogen injection has. A weapon. So that's just one tiny little window into this. Or Canada or Brazil, all announcing, you protest stolen election, your bank account is turned off. You get put in jail if we can get you. That's in my stack today. So everything they do in Canada or Brazil or Germany or America is for everybody else. And obviously, if you submit and go along and are a big leftist, get your breast cut off, chop your son's testicles off, you'll get a higher credit score for a while. But then as the resources shut off under this whole carbon regime, people are going to be encouraged to commit suicide to then, quote, raise money for their family, or you get to have fun for a year before you kill yourself. You get lionized, you get worshipped on TV. This is the whole plan to push the Soylent Green model for real. And so now Joe Biden got questioned by the press the last 2 days and said, you signed an agreement? Congress hadn't ratified it, but the bureaucracy doesn't care. Just like the G20 meetings they've had previously, or Agenda 21 in 1992, or Agenda 2030 last year. They don't care. The bureaucracy implements it, which is the way to stop it. It's illegitimate. It's a fraud. And they sent letters to the White House, they press conferences, I've got the articles, and Biden said, yes, we're creating a world ID directed by the World Economic Forum that in the last 5 years created the model, with Communist China that created the software, that the UN last year recommended be the new operating system for the world. So a Communist Chinese-made system designed by the World Economic Forum and the megabanks is now officially rolling their control grid out, and they admit, through this, we're going to control your carbon, your social credit score, and once you can't make a living, pardon Piven, your new universal basic income. But you can only spend the credits where we say, on the bug protein food, on the synthetic meat, on that sex change sterilization, on getting euthanized, on that leftist psychologist, at that mega box store. The lockdown was just an assault on local businesses, small farms and ranches, and small factories. But this is incorporated to where through the SGC system, SEGs, you won't even be able to invest or spend money or buy from a mom and pop because they're not part of it unless they force bugs on the menu. This is total dog training, absolute enslavement. So the G20 comes out and announces their vaccine passport for all future international travel. You go into the details of all these plans officially set up. The airlines, everybody's ready to add carbon taxes now through this new digital ID, where you think it's just an ID to show you've had the poison shot, which doesn't protect you, erases your immune system, makes you very sick if it doesn't kill you, but then along with it comes the social credit score. So the little vaccine cards and the QR codes everybody put in because they got ordered to by their local business associations, they got ordered to by their national, international associations we don't have paper menus anymore. You've got to scan your phone for the menu, and we're going to track what you actually ate and what you did for your carbon score. See, it's all admitted. It's all train a monkey behavior. So now Biden has come out. There's the town hall article. Biden stands behind pledge to create global vaccine passport system to protect us from the next pandemic that he says is imminent, to build on the success of creating the virus, releasing it, giving people deadly shots, destroying the economy, causing mass suicide. They're going to build on that success. Because it was successful for them to hurt you, to consolidate power, to double and triple the average billionaire's wealth, and put the average person, 66% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. 60% of Americans are on the verge of bankruptcy. But the rich people, the really rich one, not the guy that has 3 cars and a big house and a pool and his wife's got a big boob job, and you think that's the rich guy down the street because he's making $300,000 a year and you're making $100,000. No. The people that print the money, the people that control the money. Biden, the puppet president, signed onto a communique of the G20 summit in Bali, Indonesia, on Wednesday, agreeing to build on the success of existing vaccine passports. And it goes into a world ID to protect us from the next pandemic. It will also be tied into the new carbon taxes and more. And it continues, ladies and gentlemen. Canadian Bank launches credit card linked to carbon emissions, and all the other big banks around the world are launching them as well. While we have the FBI director and others announcing people that protest this are terrorists. Far left Brazilian Supreme Court orders banks to block funds of businessmen who supported protests in mass democracy rallies. Same thing with the trucker rally run by the WEF. That is the response shutting them down was. Exact same response in Brazil. It's a global government with a global control system. But its centralization is its strength, but it's also its weakness because it's illegitimate, it's totalitarian, it's anti-human, it's depopulationist, it's exterminist, under Memorandum 200 of the State Department at every level. And it goes on from there. Example after example after example. Now, when we come back, I'm going to talk about where they'll go in the future with this and how we stop it. But by the time the general public figures this out in the next few years, it will be very hard to make the transition. I have told you that I'm in a rear guard action, staying here in Austin, and not really making preparations for myself. But if I was a selfish person, I would already be gone to the countryside, the middle of nowhere, behind a hill, living in a shack at a subsistence level with a very low profile, low signature. But I know we have a chance to buffer this and deaden this assault that was still going to come, this wave. And so I decided to stay on the front line. And I say that not to be heroic. I say it to understand that you staying and challenging and being as strong as you can and fighting the agenda is much better than running and hiding. If you have the money to have a backup emergency plan, I suggest you get it. But the real defense is stopping this before it gets into place and building the future movements that will bring it down. We'll be right back. So, the lockdowns the last 2.5 years, the QR codes when you go to the grocery store, or you go into a restaurant, all of it, in their own admissions, they should train you to accept the cashless society. Buying and selling with the phone first, then face scans, then hand scans, the forehead of the hand. Prophecy being fulfilled. And the churches are rolling all this in. Everybody's going along with it because we love to adopt technology, but it's a Trojan horse. Now, here's an example. Lockdowns began in early 2020. They told you you'd be locked down for years because no vaccine would be available. They already had the vaccine made and ready to roll. It wasn't a vaccine. And they manipulated Trump into saying, I want to get things open. Let's warp speed it. It was all basic psychology, basic manipulation. We said that at the time. We're not saying that in hindsight. We predicted it and it came true. Just pointing out we know what we're talking about. And so some parts of the country stayed locked down for over a year. Some areas of Latin America and Africa and the third world for over 2 years. But in blue cities, they were locked down for over a year. But finally, when they let it open back up, after lockdowns for 2-3 weeks in Austin, 6, 7, 8 months a year in California and New York, if you went in anywhere to get a slice of pizza or hamburger or whatever it was, they wanted you to scan the QR code. Oh, no paper menus are allowed. We can't touch those and spread the virus. But it was the IMF and World Bank through the World Economic Forum and the UN that set the global standard to the International Association of Restaurants and Hospitalities and Hotels. Here's the policy so the lawyers won't sue you. It was really about control. So it's very simple. They create a global policy, and whether you're in Australia, in Sydney, or whether you're in New York City in New York, or whether you're in London, England, or whether you're in Baden-Baden, Germany, or whether you were in Moscow, or whether you were in Durban, South Africa, whether you were in Mexico City, Mexico, whether you were in Puerto Rico, it didn't matter. It was unified worldwide with a QR global program created by the Communist Party China. Look it up. And it's sponsored by the UN and the WEF to train the hospitality industry to make you scan when you come in. So that once they roll out the global ID, starting with the airports and trains, then it's to go in a grocery store, then it's to go in a business. They're already trying QR codes in areas of Canada and areas of Italy and Singapore and Communist China. And China's where it's already fully in place, where you drive down the road and a drone barks orders at you with a QR code hanging down. You've got to get out and scan it, and it tells you whether to drive over here and get taken to a camp, or it tells you whether to drive on. And when folks see people being grabbed and disappeared, it becomes normal to see that, and nobody stands up and resists. And the UN admits that's the cover for mass arrests and mass roundups and purges happening around the world. So if you want to know what's coming to your town in Canada, in Mexico, in Germany, in France, in South Africa, look no further than the highways and train stations and bus stations and grocery stores in Rome, Italy, or in Beijing, China. Guys, pull up that drone from a few weeks ago on the highway, everybody having to scan the QR code. And again, it's all based on a fraudulent PCR test that they can rig however they want, where they program in your name. When you scan, it says you're sick, you disappear. And then what did Australia say? What did New Zealand say? What did Germany say? What did Canada say last year? They said, Well, now if you protest the lockdowns, and when the police call you in Australia, you have 15 minutes to scan your face or call them back on FaceTime, or you get arrested and put in the quarantine center. So they're training everybody like we're a school of fish. Where'd Bob go? I don't know. Let's stay in our school. But this person gets picked up by a van. This person gets picked up on the highway. This person gets picked up at work. This person comes back. This other person doesn't come back. What happened to Bill? What happened to Jane? What happened to Sanchez? What happened to Mario? What happened to Chin? Oh, they died of the COVID or whatever the new thing is at the COVID center, and you don't want to protest it and say it's wrong because your social credit score will get lost or lowered, or you'll get banned off the web, or you'll get picked up too. And it's just this normalization, like the UN said. The head of the UN's Global Emergency Response Unit, Ryan, Dr. Ryan, said in all those speeches, the end game is going into the homes and breaking up the families and taking the children. So China is the beta test to perfect a model with a bunch of masked men. And what do they show in movies like The Purge? You wear masks when you go out and commit crimes. You wear masks when you go under mob psychology, mass psychosis, mass formation events. So you have the masked party of the New World Order with the men in the bunny suits, the women in the bunny suits, and the vans, and the general public all covered up so nobody knows who's who as they get disappeared. Ladies and gentlemen. And again, they tell you, just go through this emergency, things will come back to normal, but they don't come back to normal. Each time there's a new emergency, more rights are taken, more freedoms are taken. They're more entrenched, they're more in control. Then once they've collapsed the major cities and starved hundreds of millions to death, then the TV ads and the web ads will start. It's the people in the rural areas that didn't comply. They've got food, they've got water. These rich people, these kulaks, you better be in a family farm of 20 acres feeding yourself. And then they send out the armed paramilitary troops several years into it to come in and nationalize your farm. And they come in with guns, just like they did in Cuba. And they say, sign on to our agreement, give the majority of your food to us, go under this commune, hire these people we said, or we're going to take you away. And you say no, they don't shoot you in front of your family. They grab you, they put you in a van, and they take you to a special facility where you're taken into a contained room. They flip a switch, the oxygen's sucked out of the room, you're killed. Your organs are harvested. And they're building acid baths facilities all over the United States, mainstream news, legalizing a new way to dissolve bodies, not cremation, not burial, but liquid acid baths are being built that have giant capacities way above people opting in or wanting to do it. They're just building them. Seattle built a giant one last year. Denver built a giant one. New York built a giant one. They're building giant acid bath facilities that look like the factory in Soylent Green, where they just dump your bodies into green goo. It's on TV. Look it up. It looks just like Soylent Green factory. And they say the acid turns the bodies into protein, which they then feed to farm animals or use as fertilizer. Soylent Green is made out of people. So this is the dystopia. This is the plan. This is what they're going to do. And then society just crumbles and implodes. And at each step, you give over more freedom. You become their slave. You comply. You work at a death camp. You kill people to try to stay alive, but you're going to die in the end too. And more at the death camps. Combat robots, drones will be in control. Until finally there's only a few technicians at these camps and 100,000 robots killing 1 million people a week. And then the globalists are obsessed with cannibalism. The communist Chinese did this. They had huge banquets on the flesh of their enemies. Our enemies will then dine on our children like little suckling piglets. Our children will come out of the ovens with apples in their mouths, literally, and will be eaten by people like Klaus Schwab. All right, I want to take a few calls this segment and next. Meant to give the number out earlier, but I'm going to give it out now. Sean Stone's coming in studio to talk about how to defeat the New World Order next hour. He'll take some calls in as well. 877-789-2539. What do you make of Biden announcing a new world UN WEF Communist China designed and controlled ID card to spy and track on everything you do and cut you off if you don't submit to your leftist masters. It's not coming, it's here. 877-789-2539, 877-789. Alex is the number to join us. First-time callers, long-time callers, people that agree, disagree. We don't screen your calls. Just have a good phone line and be ready to talk. 877-789-2539. Love what the callers bring up. You know, Andrew Tate is really on a war to empower men and to warn families about the brainwashing of their children. That's why he's been banned and blocked and attacked. But now he is absolutely not backing down. We're very excited to be working with him with his new line of amazing supplements. You want to support our broadcast and support your own body and get blown away by amazing products, you need to go to andrewtatepower.com. Here's a little promo.
In the modern world where they convince a woman to get a job, the man to get a job, they inflate the currency so nobody can exist any other way because it's too expensive. The parents are out working all day. The school and the internet and the matrix raise your children. Your children go to school all day and be told things that you may not want them to learn. Then they sit on the internet and read things and watch things you may not want them to watch. You talk to them for 10 minutes at the end of the day and they go to bed. You're fighting with your 10 minutes against endless hours of the most entertaining programming or the most forceful programming. In school it's forceful, on the internet it's entertaining. Convincing them of ideas that you perhaps don't agree with. I've seen it myself on YouTube. I've seen a guy in America driving his car and his kids were in the back seat and he was arguing with them about an issue. And they was like, where did you hear that? School? He's like, why did the school tell you that? That's not true. And his own children are arguing with him because they learned it in school. Have you ever tried to take your children out of school? You'll get fined. You'll get in trouble. No, your kids have to go to school. Yeah. You have to give your kids away to the school. If you don't give your kids away to the brainwashing, you'll get in trouble.
As an all-star fighter, businessman, motivational speaker, and philanthropist, Andrew Tate has truly earned the title of Top G. But there's another title Andrew Tate holds that has enraged the globalist. He is consecutively the most Googled man in the world in the last 2 years. And that's because his message is about human and specifically male empowerment. Now, Andrew Tate is taking his fight to empower and supercharge men to the next level. Introducing Top G Supplements. We are proud to introduce and sponsor the Top G line of supplements by Andrew Tate and his crew. Now you have the chance to benefit in body, mind, and soul with the same supplements that Andrew Tate takes himself. Learn more about these amazing products at andrewtatepower.com. andrewtatepower.com, and discover the power of Andrew Tate's new supplements that are the highest quality on the market.
I think there's a whole bunch of men in the world who understands my value, and if men grow up to be like me, you're gonna have a whole bunch of people with no criminal record, dedicated athletes, who protect and provide for the people close to them.
All right, very excited about that new sponsor. Really great products, andrewtatepower.com. We're selling out of everything right through Christmas. Almost everything's in stock right now on InfoWarsStore.com, but it will not be in stock soon. X2, X3, our Great Wake of America coffee, our Biotrue Selenium have all sold out. Vitamin Mineral Fusion, DNA Force Plus, Knockout Sleep Aid, Bazo Beats, Secret 12, they're all incredible. They are going to be selling out very soon, but despite that, I'm keeping them 40 to 60% off with promo code 1776 at InfoWarsStore.com. I want to thank you all for your support. We're in an InfoWar. We're funded by you. Plus, these are great products you need. All right. So I just spent the last hour, really, with the Cashless Society control grid that's now official, now going into place to run every facet of your life. That's why we're trying to build our own infrastructure while we still can to stay on air through this to try to stop it. And now we're taking your phone calls. Let's go to Kim and Kimberly and Mike and Sean and Jay and Carlos and Mary and many others. Kim in Wisconsin, thanks for calling. You're on the air.
Hello, Alex. Love you. I don't understand why we would send kids back to school anymore. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I don't understand. Now that the kids will be out for the holidays, we have to stand up for the children. We have to draw the line for the children. No more school.
Well, that's right. Even if your children go to most private schools, they're all trained in the same corporate colleges and literally brainwash them and will ruin your children. So the biggest revolution is not having your children be part of their system.
Yes. My children don't have anything to do with me because they think that I'm nuts, that this is not happening, and I have 2 grandchildren I don't even get to see.
Well, take Tim Kennedy, a good friend of mine, Army veteran. He's done the right thing. He went and started a school that just teaches Americana and basic skills and reading, writing, and arithmetic. It got overflowed within the first few months. Now they're radically expanding it. So a real revolutionary act, and our forebears knew this, would be founding new independent schools. That's really what we need. My wife's cousin, their family had gone 3 generations to a school, a private school. During the lockdowns and the mask, it got taken over by communists. They ended up getting a space a mile down the road. The first year, it was filled. Now they've doubled the space, and now they've got more students from the old school at the new school, and now they've got a waiting list, and now they're about to build a new building. So again, this is how you do it. This is the real revolution.
Can you put that information up so that states and people can start taking that information and doing it themselves?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm not really an academic or good at starting schools. I was just mentioning how everybody else is going on and doing it themselves, and it's immediately a big success. And so, I mean, I can't decide for parents what the right school is for them or how they should set up a school, but I'm just saying a real revolutionary act is creating new independent schools, and there's a major hunger for it. I appreciate your call. Great point. Sean in New York. Sean, you're on the air.
Good morning, Alex Jones. This is Clown Carter, my senior reporting for duty, sir. I just wanted to let you know I have the 12 days of InfoWars Christmas.
Well, tell me.
Okay, well, on the first day of Chinese Christmas, my ex-girlfriend texted me a meme that Alex Jones is right. On the second day of Chinese Christmas, my ex-girlfriend texted me 2 chicks with a pricks are sinning, and a meme with Alex Jones is right. On the third day of Chinese Christmas, my true ex-girlfriend sent to me 3 Stooges beam to Star Trek, 1 chicks with... I messed it up. But anyway, it goes on at the 4 callers calling InfoWars with products, 5 boosters still don't work, 6 Gregory specials playing, 7 drain the swamp, but they're still swimming, 8 top officials say 9 lockdowns coming, 11 vaccinators swinging, Operation Vaccination, and it goes on. I got to fix it. When I fix it, I'll call you back.
Well, I mean, I hear negativity in what you're saying, but we can't give up, can we? It'll only be worse if we give up.
I'm not giving up, Alex. I'm out here fighting every day. I go to all the rallies in the city. I bring out my CO2 carbon dioxide tester that I use at work, that I'm certified by OSHA, certified by my union. I try to show the people. I did it in front of the health department, and the cops saw me do it, and they took off their masks right then and there. I showed them my licenses. I showed them that this is the machine that OSHA has referred to. It is a forensic detector, M8060, something like that, which is the one that they refer to in OSHA's standards of what fresh air is. I show them, and people just don't listen, Alex. I don't know. Can't wake up a dead bird anymore, brother.
Well, you said the police listen to you, and explain to people, I've read, depending on the mask, they lower oxygen up to 40% on average over 25. That's enough to cause brain damage, and that's what our kids are wearing still.
Alex, I try to explain to people, if you put this on your child, just go to the CDC website. Under a holiday recommendation, it says children under 2 do not put a mask on because it can cause asphyxiation. Also, if you saw alarms going off inside of a school like they do with the mask test when I do the CO2 test, would you send your kids into a school that has alarms blaring everywhere? No, but I try to show people within 10 seconds that this thing starts to show deadly levels of carbon monoxide, parts per million. It's a $1,000 machine that I use for work, and you know, I work in confined space with welding, and people just think it's a joke. I try to explain to people, you're brain damaging your kids, you're brain damaging yourself. Over time, you're causing the hemoglobin not to carry the oxygen to the blood to your brain, and you're becoming stupid. And that's what I think happened, Alex. But between the nanoparticles in the food and turning the frogs gay, you were right all along. Alex Jones is right.
Well, you're right, Sean, to warn people, and it sounds like you're having a big effect, so keep it up. God bless you, sir. Thank you so much for the call. We love the callers. We're going to go to break and talk to Mary and Tyson and Kimberly and Zach and Matt and everybody else straight ahead. Infowars.com. John Stone, filmmaker, Patriot author, is going to be in the studio, and Vivian Kubrick is here making a documentary, and I guess she wants to come on, which I'm happy to have her on. He wants her on. They're both sons and daughters of famous filmmakers. He's the son of Oliver Stone. She's the daughter of Stanley Kubrick. Doesn't get better than that, does it? So they'll always have some insightful things to say with us in studio in the third hour. Right now, let's go back to your phone calls. Matt in Ohio, thanks for holding.
Hey, how's it going, Mr. Jones?
Good, sir.
I just wanted to talk more about that cashless society. You were right, it's leading to the mark of the beast system, and people really need to wake up. They need to quit living in these bubbles of entertainment, you know, and being distracted by everything else going on, and they need to really focus on the things that's currently going on. Even the G2 summit you were talking about, they were literally over there creating a new 10 Commandments. They were going up to Mount Sinai. I don't know if you've seen that part. The Pope was even
involved.
I did.
And remember, the Georgia Guidestones that just got blown up, it has its 10 Commandments. It's the same cult.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder what those 10 Commandments are going to say on there. They're probably going to tell you things like, you cannot go here, you cannot do this, et cetera, et cetera. It's just another way to monitor you. And it's just crazy how they're trying to replace the biblical 10 Commandments. If that doesn't show people we are in the end times, I don't know what.
They are fulfilling prophecy themselves. Klaus Schwab says the final thing will be a chip in your skin or a face scan or a palm scan to buy and sell. This has all been announced. I mean, I can play the videos.
Exactly. And also, are you aware of the mysterious purple lights that have been appearing in places? The street lights are saying they're blaming it on malfunctions.
Yes.
I think that's a way for them to track, the people that got the jab. That's personally my belief.
Buddy, they're doing all sorts of wild experiences and weird experiments on us. Thank you so much, Matt. Let's talk to Kimberly in Washington. Go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
Alex Jones, huge fan, very honored to speak with you. Real quick, so with all this cashless society, do you not think that people are going to go back to a barter and trade system, people just unwilling to participate in this?
Well, that's the solution. I meant to get to solutions, and I didn't, of course. We need to take over local governments, create barter societies, go back to micro farming in the city and rural as well as urban, and we need to understand this whole system's coming, and as many of us as we can, maybe part of your family moves to the country, and you have a place there, no matter how quaint or how small, and then you've got your place in the city where you still got to work within it. But people should be pulling their kids out of school, electing patriot leaders that realize what's happening, standing against the world government rollout, saying no to the cashless society, and getting back to subsistence farming and living.
Absolutely, 100%. I just wanted to bring that up because I'm one of those people where my kids aren't going to starve. And so I'm already thinking ahead, like, well, if this is going to happen, what are we going to do? Because I think there's a lot of people that just aren't going to put up with this. And I've even been talking to my husband about distilling alcohol. You have to have something to barter, I believe, in the future.
In fact, I was about to, I'm looking for, there's a few books on it, but in the future, alcohol will be an incredible currency. So will mom and pop, natural herbal medicines and things. And instead of just selling these products, we need to get to the point where people know how to produce them themselves. And you're right. In any subsistence farming situation, grain alcohol, knowing how to make things like that will absolutely feed your family. Because that's the thing. You don't need to have 10 crops or 5 crops. You can have, say, pigs or cows and corn, or you can have tomatoes and things that and pickles, things that and then everybody shares in the community. And that's really what we're designed to do. It's fun. It's amazing. And I got to tell you, in the Great Depression, my family in East Texas, there's still old rotting stills out there. They stayed in business and didn't go bankrupt selling moonshine, baby. So absolutely.
Okay, and real quick, Alex Jones, I got to tell you about X2 real quick. I actually have a vaccine-injured child, and the X2, unbelievable help with seizure control. I just wanted to thank you for that.
Well, the biggest deficiency in the world, the UN admits, 2.3 million people have brain damage, cognitive problems, and/or epileptic-type issues because of iodine deficiency. And so it won't cure a lot of problems, but it'll certainly been proven to be mitigated. Most people are iodine deficient. What did you see once you started having your son take the iodine?
My daughter. It's like you said, it took a little bit to kick in, but we went from very uncontrolled seizures, multiple a week, to maybe once or twice a week now. It's amazing. You wouldn't believe it.
So, I mean, what percentage reduction in seizures would you say you observed?
Percentage, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know, but I was seeing about 10 a week, and now we maybe see 2. Sometimes she'll go a week without any.
Well, electrochemically, iodine is the key in cells. If you don't have that, cells can't operate. Thank you for the call. Sorry to hear about your daughter being damaged by the deadly shots. Jay in Tennessee, you're on the air. Go ahead.
How you doing, Mr. Jones?
Good, brother.
I take about 20 of your supplements every morning. And I run like a crazy man, and I'm a truck driver, so I'm looking forward to the Turbo Force coming back. But okay,
I know that's been sold out a while, and I apologize. Thank you for the support.
I'm not mad. I got all of your coins and the gold, and I got everything. But anywho, past all that, I'm hoping when Mr. Robert Bonds was, talking constitutionally how maybe this could happen and that can happen before January 6th, and none of it happened, got kind of depressing, These midterms, I never anticipated anybody really making any big marks with the Republican Party, which, I think is mostly a bunch of rhinos. But now there's been a couple of inquiries with this FBI guy, Christopher Wray there, and then that other guy there, the bald-headed guy, I don't like him at all. You showed his video today.
You talking about Mayorkas?
Coming at, talking about the social credit score and...
Yes, America is waking up to the fact that we have a seized, controlled executive law enforcement branch. And so that's good news. So we only got to go up from here.
What I'm hoping is, and yeah, I'm mad at Trump, but I voted for him twice, and I would vote for him again. But I'm hoping that he's keeping it on the down low, that maybe he will become the Speaker of the House if they allow that to happen. And I'm hoping that Lauren Boebert out there gets the ability to stay in her seat.
Well,
in
she's
the
declared victory. They're having a recount, but it looks like she's going to win. Great point, sir. Thank you so much for the call. Carlos in Canada, we got about 3 minutes to break. He was talking about weapons to fight the New World Order. And yeah, Carlos, how do we fight the cashless society rollout? Go ahead.
Okay, very straightforward. You will own nothing and you'll be happy. Okay, well, I have shares in stocks, and I'm telling you, I'm not giving them up. I'm a shareholder, I'm a stakeholder, and every American, everybody in the world, Canadian or otherwise, can go and you have shareholder rights. These individuals that control thousands of corporations, because they have majority shareholding or because they have their money under management, are telling the United Nations, Prince Charles was saying it, you have more money than governments. All right, well, I'm a shareholder. I have the right as a shareholder to stand up on a board of directors meeting or to stand at a meeting of shareholders and say, hey, clearly, ladies and gentlemen, you are subject to the corporation that has registered in my nation, in my country. You do what you're supposed to do, sell widgets, and stop running my world.
And let me stop you, Carlos, because I said I would get into solutions, and this was actually the main one, and I didn't. And I'm so glad you're smart and you called, and I want you to elaborate. They call themselves shareholders because they're globalists meeting at an event, maybe 100 of them. But the real shareholders are the literal shareholders in the companies, and then local governmental regulators have something to say. So just like the EU is trying to bring in tyranny against shareholders, we can exude resistance to what they're doing, just like BlackRock having millions and billions leave for their activity. So yes, that one of the biggest ways is for shareholders to put pressure on these companies going along with the SCGs and the New World Order.
Yes, Alex. They show up at the Vatican with $20 trillion worth of power. Lady Rothschild, she tells the Pope, hey, these are my guardians. Here we are because you wrote Sui Fratelli, you're the brother's keeper. And we want to really make sure that we're doing the job. And the Pope said to her clearly, hey, do the job and then come to talk to me about Sui Fratelli. Okay? So don't think for 1 minute that these guys can bamboozle us like we're dummies. We're not. Number two, you have a problem. You're going to have a World Economic Forum breastfed by Klaus Schwab, who is a young global leader, governor of the state of California, Gavin Newsom, run for president. And you're going to see what's going to happen if he becomes president.
Well, we're seeing what happens with Xi Jinping and Trudeau and this new idiot running the UK. Incredible points, Carlos. With 30 seconds left, other solutions to stand up against this world government takeover.
Well, very straightforward. The final and the most straightforward solutions that we have is to basically make our children to listen to people like Andrew Tate. Because by developing yourself, by taking care of others, that's the future. That's the vision that the American people had. If you take 8 billion people, Alex, and you put them all in one concert, in one place, all of them, let's say you did. Let's say they would all fit in an island, in the smallest island in the Hawaii.
I hear it. We don't need to depopulate. Thank you. All right, the planets have aligned. Sean Stone was just happened to be visiting in town. We talked and said, why don't you come on the show? And Vivian Kubrick is here making a documentary film. Both of you guys are filmmakers in your own right. And, of course, you're an author, Sean Stone, as well, and a TV producer. And both your fathers are some of the most famous directors in history, Stanley Kubrick. And, of course, your dad needs no introduction, Oliver Stone. And your dad's an expert on, and so are you, on what's happening over in Ukraine that's leading us towards World War III. The whole false flag missile attack, the world government, cashless society being announced, stolen elections, just mass psychosis. They're planning for new lockdowns. I mean, we really are stepping into the dystopia. I hate being vindicated, being on air 28 years, reading their own documents. I wasn't predicting. I knew they had power. They were planning this. I tried to stop it. Now we're in it, but people are halfway awake. This is, how would you describe, first Sean Stone and Vivian Kubrick, the moment in history we're in right now?
It's like being in a dream. It's like being in a dream where everyone is, in a sense, experiencing their own realities, and it's almost difficult to get us on the same wavelength, the same page here, because, as you said, like, there are these forces that we can identify and we can point to, and obviously it's manipulating the media, the news cycle that's put out there. We can really tell the agenda very clearly based on the news cycle, but as far as our experience of it, it is so different, right? I mean, life has broken down into that place where maybe that's the point, the beauty of it is if we can reclaim like some sense of how reality in Los Angeles is 180 degrees different from what it is right now here in Austin, from what I experience and live in Florida, right? And maybe that's the beauty of it, is getting back to the States. And I think that, if anything else, like, my only hope right now is looking at the elections going, okay, great, they did their rigging, they've prolonged, they've drawn out these ballots for days and weeks, and it's disgusting, obviously, what can be done now with the rigging. But look at least at Florida as totally red, and Texas obviously didn't, they didn't get Beto in here. There weren't, it wasn't like there was some major tectonic shifts that took place. So if you go to the state levels, there is still a fight going on, and there is still resistance going on at the state levels, and there is still opportunity, I think, for people to say, well, I can't deal with California politics anymore, I'm leaving. We've seen that, obviously, and I think it'll just continue, and it'll continue in the coming years, because the more that they force down our throats these policies, the more the human spirit just rejects it and says, no, that's not my reality anymore, I'm leaving.
I totally agree with you. I told my wife 2 days ago, I said, I even cut a little promo that's going to air next week where I give Thanksgiving. I'm more thankful now than ever, because good versus evil is so clear. Before it was under the surface, now it's been forced out in the open, and the forces of enslavement who are anti-free will are more desperate than ever. So this looks really bad, but it's forcing the infection to the surface. And as you said, the paradox of being in one state like it's another country versus one that's still under the mind control is night and day. And it shows there's a way out. And as people in those more enslaved areas see those of us in less enslaved areas, we become an example to them. Vivian Kubrick, how would you describe the place we're at right now worldwide and also here in America?
Well, I feel like people are being challenged, unlike any other period of history, to actually interface with their true selves, to not operate from being, inculcated with, lies and the psyops. In fact, Sean and I were just talking about this before we went live on air, that people need to understand how the psyops work. That's going to really help them emerge as their true selves, because psyops are weird. They really do affect you. They affect me. And it's so, God, what's the right word? I can't think of it. It begins with I. That's the only thing I can remember about it. Anyway.
It's very surreal.
Well, it's very surreal when you actually start to see, like I was saying the other night, the mainstream media cut together all the talking heads, and then this super sinister alignment of everything they're saying is the same sentence. That is so terrifying to me. And if only people could just see 30 seconds of those kinds of videos, they're going to go, wait a minute, nobody's actually independently reporting the news.
That's right. When you've got ABC, CBS, NBC, all of them in the exact same script, that's when you're in a tyranny. I mean, you're a tyranny trying to take over.
Well, so I had this conversation recently about you, Alex. It was funny. I was in LA and I was talking to a filmmaker there, and he was basically giving me the talking points as to why you were being sued, because you had incited people to digging up graves and terrorizing these Sandy Hook parents. And I said, well, I'm not sure if that's true, but if that is true, if he's guilty of incitement, think about the consequence of that. And it's like only then did I actually catch him. And he started like thinking about it and go, think about that. So you say something that incites me, and I go over there and I rob someone or I kill someone, and now you're responsible?
Actually, I just want to say something.
Isn't
that takes away everybody else's freedom.
But that's the whole point. We've lost responsibility if we're guilty of incitement. My father got sued for this in the 90s.
That's
what killers, right?
Well, wait a minute. I just want to say, with Clockwork Orange, people at the time, people were raping and killing and robbing, and then they were saying, "Oh, I did it because I saw Clockwork Orange," which I doubt was ever true. But anyway, Margaret Whitehouse, I think that's her name. I can't remember now. Anyway, she was a big kind of like moral compass for the conservative world, said that my father was responsible for these things. And it became so bad that my father actually said, right, that's it. I don't want Clockwork Orange to be shown in England again as long as I live. Because he was being, literally, I couldn't...
And of course, the film makes you not want to be violent, and it's anti-violence.
Oh, well, this... you know what? This is what we were talking about last week, about the audience contributes to the film. So if the audience is at a very low level consciousness, what they're going to contribute and understand about the film, it's going to be very different than how you and I did experience it. I just must tell you a hilarious thing. A guy, big tech guy in California, in Los Angeles, Hollywood, he said to me that he loved Clockwork Orange because he thought Alex was living such a great life. And I sort of went, what? I said, that's a very interesting interpretation of Clockwork Orange.
When really the novel and your dad's film, it's obvious the state's corrupt and evil, and it's reflecting down to the grassroots. And that's what it's saying.
Well, that was exactly the point of Clockwork Orange, which inspired Natural Born Killers in some way.
Did
That's
it?
Why, well, it was involved. I mean, I know that my father, when I was in the film Natural Born Killers as the little brother of Mallory Knox, right, the Julia Lewis character, he had me wear the Clockwork Orange makeup in homage to that film.
Oh.
And of course it was about the violence of society, right? That's what Natural Born Killers was trying to reflect, was how violent my father conceived of the media portrayal of violence. It's a fascination with violence.
Just like they promote mass shootings, they know it causes more.
Well, it's like they promote the mass shootings. Look at Netflix right now. I mean, most of Netflix's shows are about crime, serial killers, Dahmer, it's cannibalism. It's like, it's a very brutal, dark perspective of reality, right? That's what we're basically being fed. And
this is powerful. Sean Stone, Vivian Kubrick, stay with us. Let's come right back to this topic when we come back. Stay with us. Sean Stone, Vivian Kubrick in studio here on the Alex Jones Show. So you got cut off by the break, Sean and Vivian. You're talking about your dad makes a film against violence. Your dad makes a film against violence. It's obviously somebody that is empathetic and smart. It's obviously horrible. Makes you hate violence. And it's obviously the state has created a process that creates these creatures and then hires them as their police later. The novel is powerful as well, Clockwork Orange. And then they turn it around and say, you're promoting violence, when it was both your fathers in those films exposing that the system in studies is actually creating the violence loop.
Right. I mean, well, at least that was the intention of Natural Born Killers as well as Clockwork Orange. But with Natural Born Killers, you recall there was a lawsuit that was brought in the 90s against my father by Grisham and company because of a person that was seriously crippled. She was crippled by a shooter who basically said that this guy went out there and he said, I saw Natural Born Killers 100 times on mushrooms or whatever, and he wanted to role play basically and play Mickey and Mallory, and they shot people up. And so the idea was that the lawsuit was against Oliver Stone and Warner Brothers as making a faulty product, right? Like they inspired these shootings. And it's like, but that's the problem. You can't go down this path of saying...
Well, that's what they did with me. They misrepresented what I said, took it out of context, made it a huge issue, claimed I made it a big issue. Judge found me guilty, and then now they call it the Alex Jones precedent, where they can claim if anybody does anything we claim encourages somebody else to do something, then I'm at fault for someone digging up someone's grave that it turns out never even happened.
Right.
But you're both talking about a key issue about us as humanity. Is that, are we going to be responsible for ourselves, or are we always going to have Big Nanny in our head going, wow, I must take care of humanity and make sure that I never put anything out which might cause them to go and strangle somebody? Why wouldn't we expect for humanity to go, wow, strangling people is bad. Even though it's in this film, I'm not going to do it because it's terrible.
And it's just like you were saying, earlier, though, the system knows full well that that's not the case. They never criticize their product that's actually designed to do it. They criticize those that are trying to stop it.
You know, again, it's gotten to a very dangerous place when you say, as you say, Vivian, when you let go of individual responsibility, because that's what we've seen the last 2 years, right? I mean, the whole thing with the pandemic was like, no one. I've ever seen this quote recently. It's like, no one is safe until everyone is safe.
Oh God.
And it's like, what does that even mean? You're never gonna be safe. I'm sorry.
And now we know it doesn't protect you and is a fraud. So what did that director say when you pointed out you're next?
Who's that?
We said you were talking to a filmmaker, and you said once they get Alex Jones, now you can be blamed as well.
Right. Well, that was actually an interesting moment. I think that we did then get to a more common ground because he was so agitated against you personally, and that's the point. Like we.
Sorry,
get to
which
this place.
director?
I'm not going to say what. But the point is that when people are so personally, we've gotten to this place, right, where it's about if Trump says it, it doesn't matter what it is. The sky's blue, he's wrong. We don't like him. And we've turned this into an inability to hear what's being said because we so are ready to attack whoever says it, right? So if Alex says it, then it must be bad. But if I say it and all of a sudden it's like, maybe that actually makes sense, because maybe I'm not as
or Democrat Congress members incite violence against Republicans and say it's good that Scalise got shot or good that Rand Paul got his ribs broken and lung pierced. That's good, but then they lie and say I invoked violence when I didn't.
But that's, again, I mean, even if they did say that was good, you know what? They have the right to say that.
I agree, they do.
And we acknowledge that. We acknowledge that freedom of speech. And that's what it's so difficult for us to fathom. Vivian, you've been alive a little longer than I have, but like just going through these decades of watching how society has tried to normalize the idea that free speech is not inherently free, that we should be censored.
So Vivian and Sean, what is the process the social engineers are in trying to restrict the general public speech? I see it as a sign of weakness.
Oh, it's without question of weakness because they don't want to be challenged in any way. But I think that that's the nature of bullies and criminals, is that they only know how to crush in order to achieve their ends. And I think what we have to understand is there's nothing more important than having dialogue, exchanging ideas, defending our position, but also being willing to listen. But that would be the mark of maturity. And right now they've tried to, create infantile populations who, look to the government to, be saved, or look to the government for the truth and won't do anything unless they're given the go-ahead. It's terrifying.
Absolutely agree.
Can the general population be saved? Because if they do get brainwashed into an animal form, now they're a howling mob that can be used against us. I don't want to kill them. I don't want to put everybody in prison, but it's really an alchemy that's happening where I've had globalists tell me, they say, look, the public's a bunch of animals. They're going to get everybody. You'll be on our side soon enough. That they say they're hastening the process of societal collapse because they believe it's going to collapse anyway. So why not just get it over with?
I saw today's study validating what a lot of the stuff you were talking about with the drop in male fertility and sperm, right? And it's like I saw there was a drop in 60% in the last 50 years. So we've gone past the 50% mark into the 60+% mark. And obviously we know that the COVID shots are designed to affect the ovaries, and they're affecting obviously female periods. I think that 2021 was the first year I saw, no one really caught that. They said in America there was really no increase in population for the first time. It was really interesting. I mean, I don't know about the immigrant or the migrant issue.
Precipitous drop directly connected to German study to the shot.
But that's for sure. The point being that we are now going to go into this collapse, at least in the West. Now, a lot of the Eastern world, I mean, didn't get the shots, right? A lot of Africa, a lot of Asian countries, a lot of poor countries didn't necessarily do this. So,
well, the globalists say it's the first world using the most, so they hit us first.
Right. And this is going to be really what's so interesting to see how this plays out in this coming time period, right? The overall, the fourth industrial revolution, right? They want a centralized, controlled population in cities that are sort of sterilized, that basically go like Brave New World. You want to, have a child, you go into the doctor and you basically go choose your ovary. I guess you choose the ovary, you choose the sperm.
And they're admitting that's their plan, and we're just trying to have a debate about the world they're building.
Right, and then,
Sorry, I must just say something. Let's just acknowledge the fact that these people are insane, they're psychopathic, they have no empathy, and what they're trying to create is so diabolical that to describe it as anything like they're planning this, no, this is the act of kind of computing psychotics. They've got the ability to be brilliant, but they have no ability to be human. And
they're in love with this. I call it the science of tyranny.
Well, actually, yeah. I think I mentioned this the last time, but anybody who wants to look at the most absolutely gobsmacking, incredible fact, Aristotle, 2,400 years ago, in his book on ethics, wrote about if you want to create a tyranny, this is what you do. It's about 2 or 3 pages long. I invite everyone to go and look at it, because you will realize how ancient this playbook is.
Oh, and Plato is their model. So
No,
I read.
Aristotle. Oh, well, I suppose he was a student, but.
Well, yeah. Tell me the particular Aristotle derivative so we can look that up.
Oh,
I remember. We'll try to find it during the break, but yes.
Just look up Syracuse and Persia. If you do a word search, I think it'll get you straight to it, because he talks about these women who are spies, and I think they're called the whores of Syracuse or something. But the thing is,
guys, look up Aristotle, the whores of Syracuse. Yes.
Or Syracuse, just as a word search. Yeah. Anyway, it's probably, it would take about 5 minutes to read it. You will be absolutely shocked to see that if you want to run a tyranny, it's always been run the same way. 2,400 years ago, they're doing exactly what they're doing now.
Well, you've cut right to the root. It was Plato that wrote up these plans.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the
Yeah.
Republic, and how he imagined society being run in fashion, but.
Actually, can I just say something?
Go ahead.
Oh, we gotta go to break. The reason we're still on air as radio stations. I know they're annoying. We'll be right back. Stay with us. People have asked me what I think of Elon Musk, and I've kind of told you, but it would take an hour to really break it down. It's important. He's the next level of the New World Order. He plays both sides. He says he's pro-humanity, but he also goes along with their whole agenda. I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy. I judge a tree by its fruits. But I told everybody this. I'm not worried about getting back on Twitter. He's under such attack, even trying to make it quasi-free. They're destroying it right now. But he did respond to folks asking him today, what should Twitter do next? And a lot of folks said, bring back Alex Jones. His response was, no. So that is kind of a litmus test, because that's a bridge too far. But that's part of that process. Now, Vivian Kubrick's here. So is Sean Stone. We've got a lot to talk about, a lot of big issues. But you were getting into philosophy and going back to the Greek philosopher Aristotle and his mentor, and of course Plato put out two, 3 sides to everything, but he was the first to say the plebes are crushing the breast of Mother Earth. We need to ban poor people breeding. We need to have breeding programs to make better people. What he talked about later got picked up by the Romans. Then it got picked up by Malthus. Then it got picked up by Francis Galton. Then it got picked up by the eugenicists in England, and then Adolf Hitler. So when we see the transhumanists, they all hail from that same school. The discoverer of DNA, saying blacks are subhuman and all that. It's really the same group. But now, as you talked about Bertrand Russell, it's all wrapped in a liberal, neoliberal packaging. Vivian, please continue.
Well, I was just saying to Sean, actually, in the break, you can't reinvent the wheel, really, and to have a tyranny, you basically have to do the same thing. So I just want to say, if you want to read about Plato, really ironically written by a eugenicist and whatever, Bertrand Russell, if you go to the History of Western Philosophy, chapter 14, I think it is, you'll see described there basically the blueprint for the globalists. And I would say that, to put it in a nutshell, whatever it is that determines somebody's state of consciousness, what's consistent here is that they have contempt for others. And it seems like what's really astonishing is they always have the same old playbook, and they...
Total conceit. You've got a quote. Tell us where it's from.
Contempt. Right. So this is from Aristotle's Ethics, and this is how to have a tyranny, a successful one. As to tyrannies, they are preserved in 2 most opposite ways. One of them is the old traditional method in which most tyrants administer their government. Of such arts, Herod, I can't read that, of Corinth is said to have been the great master. And many similar devices may be gathered from the Persians in the administration of their government. They are firstly, the prescriptions mentioned some distance back, sorry, this is all lead up.
Take your time.
Okay, some distance back, for the preservation of a tyranny, insofar as this is possible, that the tyrant should lop off those who are too high. He must put to death men of spirit. He must not allow common meals, clubs, education, and the like. He must be upon his guard against anything which is likely to inspire either courage or confidence amongst his subjects. He must prohibit literary assemblies or other meetings for discussion. And he must take every means to prevent people from knowing one another, for acquaintance begets mutual confidence. Further, he must compel all persons staying in the city to appear in public and live at his gates. Then he will know what they are doing. If they are always kept under, they will learn to be humble. In short, he should practice these and the like Persian and barbaric arts, which all have the same object. A tyrant should also endeavor to know what each of his subjects says or does, and should employ spies, like the female detectives, sorry, not whores, female detectives of Syracuse, and the eavesdroppers who Hero was in the habit of sending to any place of resort or meeting. For the fear of informers prevents people from speaking their minds, and if they do, they are more easily found out. Another art of the tyrant is to sow quarrels amongst the citizens. Friends should be embroiled with friends, the people with the notables, and the rich with one another. Also, he should impoverish his subjects. He thus provides against the maintenance of a guard by the citizen, and the people, having to keep hard at work, are prevented from conspiring. I mean, it goes on. But that's 2,400 years ago.
It's so interesting, the concept of the cancel culture, I see it, is very much like the spy network in the old days, and the idea of being found out for what you said and being found out for thinking in a way that could be construed as dangerous or different, right? And so how it's self-imposed cancellation that occurs, right? You don't allow yourself to say what you think. You don't allow yourself to be heard saying something that can be attacked and targeted. And
you self-censor.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you look at that model, all of it has now been compounded, and we see it being done today.
It's all before our eyes now, right? And that's what's the crazy part, right? It's things that are in front of our faces, we can't talk about, right? I mean, even to the place now, finally the Congress is hopefully going to do something with this Hunter Biden story, right, and the corruption of old Joe. But the point being that even to this day, that if people are being accused of conspiracy theory for talking about it.
Yeah, what's with this? What's with this? It's a conspiracy theory. Can we just finally say out loud that the CIA came up with this terminology in order to...
They didn't come up with it. They weaponized it. They basically, they said you have to slander the conspiracy theorists. But
your dad made JFK, which is an excellent film on what really happened, but it came out a few years after that the CIA said, people question, we just call it conspiracy theory so that we can ridicule those without looking at the actual evidence.
Yeah, it was very clear how they targeted anyone that questioned the Warren Commission. But the point is that the government uses conspiracies all the time. So I try to say to people, look at RICO acts. The government uses conspiracy when it goes after drug dealers, when it goes after, even, you name it, Trump, they go after these things on conspiracy, right? The January 6th stuff. I mean, it's all government usage of conspiracy that no one questions. Why is it that if I say conspiracy, everyone's, the big tobacco, that was a conspiracy. Government went after them on conspiracy.
And here's the control, though, when you pull back. I have articles right here where Biden got questioned about the new congressional investigation to his son. He said, that's a conspiracy theory. That's been debunked. And they censored everybody 2+ years ago during the campaign that tried to raise it, even though they now admit it's real. But in the audio and in the video, they're taking orders from the head of Chinese intelligence. So they make it about Burisma and gas companies and 10% for the big guy. That's a diversion from him saying, me and my dad take orders from Xi Jinping, which is true. That's really the big enchilada.
Yeah, that's a big quote.
Well, I'll tell you, my honest opinion is that there isn't a political system. There is just gangsterism. That's how this planet
works. No, I agree. It's a group of gangsters.
Yeah, so I mean, anything that you've learned about the mafia, just apply it to government and all of this so-called diplomatic, I'm sure...
Well, that's another big psyop, that Italians invented organized crime, and they're the only ones that do this. I mean, the globalist mafia, it's the real mafia.
And they're ancient, thousands of years, thousands of years of mafia rulership, of empires, and then all of a sudden it becomes, democracies, so-called.
You could write a book on the secret mafia, the real mafia.
Well, I don't know enough of those old families. I think, Vivian, you know any of those old families?
This is what I know, is that it takes a certain kind of human being, and they exist all over the place.
I was about to say, they'll use any group or any organization. It's a cult of philosophy.
It's a cult of criminal beings.
It's like Soros working with the Nazis. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's what they do.
By the way, if anybody hasn't seen this, you need to find this. George Soros gave this interview probably about, I don't know, 25 years or 30 years ago, where he just matter-of-factly, which is so classic of psychopaths, admits that he helped the Nazis. And he said, yes, I would do it again.
If I didn't do it, who else? Someone else would.
Yeah, and it was the happiest time of my life.
It shaped his psychology, which is what's so important to understand about Soros. But now you can't, Wikipedia, is all Soros agents, so that's why so much is scrubbed on Wikipedia.
Well, Soros is good, a good person.
Right? Yeah,
what?
Exactly.
I'm joking.
Oh.
Well, if this is the ridiculous of the time, though. You say something against Soros, you're anti-Semitic. I mean, it's like that has nothing to do with the two. It's like saying, someone
hides behind that.
It's like saying you're attacking someone who's being a gangster, and you're saying, well, you're anti-Italian. It's like just because that person's a gangster doesn't have anything to do with their race.
This is the great trick that they're playing on people, and you've got to stop getting into this, people. You need to recognize that there are Jews, Muslims, Christians, atheists, Buddhists who are evil people.
This is a big set. Hold on, this is key. Let's come right back. We got some Clockwork Orange music bringing us in here. Vivian Kubrick, you got cut off by that break. I'm sorry. They'll try to take it out of context. Go back to what you were saying and complete the statement.
All right, so I'm sick of Jewish criminals, Christian criminals, Buddhist criminals, atheist criminals, whatever you are, you're a criminal. But in this whole thing, the Jewish issue of, claiming people are anti-Semitic if they attack a Jewish criminal, there are plenty of Jews. There are like 15.2 million Jews on this planet. I don't think they want to be associated with George Soros. George Soros is a criminal and a psychopath. You only have to listen to his interview where he claims that it was the happiest time of his life when he was handing Jews over to the Nazis. So he is a nut job. I have no hesitation in describing him as a criminal, arch criminal, and he cannot hide behind anti-Semitism when he claims that or people claim that it's anti-Semitic to say that he's a horrific criminal. And just as there are Christian criminals, if you say that...
Yeah, none of them should be able to hide behind a religion or an ethnicity.
No,
but these people are good at making it about that as a diversion, and there are plenty of groups that are out of control that hate people because of what group they've been part of, and that's terrible too.
Well, the only group that I think the left won't criticize now is Satanists. I think that's the most protected class. I think the most protected group. I think
that's a good point.
I really think
that is a terrifyingly good point.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is?
Well, because why do you think it is? I mean, my docuseries Best Kept Secret got into all this, right? The whole dark cabal, and how this is an inversion agenda. I mean, if you really think about what's happened in our reality, and left is right and up is down and black is white. I mean, that's all. Anton LaVey was talking about that back in the 70s. That was his quote. Freedom is slavery. I mean, there was a complete inversion of reality, and to get to this place now where we are in a place where kids can't drink, but they can have a sex change. I mean, and for the permanently castrating themselves, that's normalized. I mean, you can have abortion up until birth, if not after birth, in California.
Which is horrendous.
I mean, things like this that just was it was so far, so far from.
This really is a satanic revolution,
right? It's a really fascinating thing to.
That'd be a great book or film, The Satanic Revolution.
Oh, don't. You'll encourage them. No, I think...
Well, no, we'd expose it. That'd be our film.
Well, I do think that this is the
Sean Stone, Vivian Cooper, and Alex Jones in the new top film, The Satanic Revolution.
They'll probably go, this will be worth watching. They'll think it's about them in a really nice way.
But explain how they're being set up to be alone and cut off being selfish, and how you think the devil's hot cheerleaders or whatever. But it's not. It's impoverishment, it's betrayal, it's death.
But Alex, this is the most key thing about understanding, let's say, the devil or Satan. Let's say it's not even a question of this actually being a real being that lives. Let's just say...
The archetype.
Right. That what you're dealing with is half-truths. The only way you can persuade people is if you actually have half of the truth, and in that way you can enslave them, because that's how you... I mean, con artists, the government, the CIA, they always try and hang on...
When you're catching a bass, there's a real live worm on the hook.
There has to be something there that's real. Otherwise, you're not going to capture people. And then what you do is you just keep putting them off. You just keep navigating them away from the truth. And then it's only when it's too late and they're caught in a trap, or they're so deluded that they don't know.
I agree. What I've noticed is the people that buy lottery tickets are degenerate gamblers. they're being abused by it, but they keep doubling down because they've invested so much.
Right. That's right.
Well, that's a real crazy part of humanity. I mean, the human condition is that the attempt to be right is so powerful that the defensiveness that comes over people when you even remotely go at the things that they're hanging on to as the truth. Sorry, banging my mic here.
Doing good.
Yeah, is that they get very defensive. That's why it's a real art to enter into a conversation with, for instance, people who have been fully psyoped and gently, get them back into a place where they can differentiate. And the thing is, I've had this conversation with someone who was very progressive and said, oh, it's not true what you're saying, that they were going to kill babies at birth. And I said, look, here is this woman. I forget her name.
Here's the legislation.
Well, here's the legislation. I sent him that. I said, here's the woman speaking to the court. And the judge says to her, so you're saying that you would actually end the life of a baby after it's born? And she kept iffing and uffing. And then he said, well, yeah, that would be what it is. And the guy said to me, oh, she's just not good at expressing herself. And I went, what? She absolutely clearly said, yes, we would consider.
Well, that's right. They have like a form of Stockholm syndrome. Is it even worth it to try to save those people? Instead, get the people that are awake just to stop complying?
We have to. I mean, we have to do something here. that's clear, right? And again, I don't know that you can do it with this system the way that it's rigged currently, right? I mean, that was the most disheartening thing of the last few weeks, was just watching 2020 happen all over again with these drawn out mail-in ballot schemes, right? That's taking days, and then obviously, just seeing it's inevitable, right?
But as you said, you're optimistic because there's a lot of awakening worldwide.
Yeah.
But it's paradoxical as it's also getting worse. So
it's extreme.
For every action, there's an opposite equal reaction. Newtonian physics. John Stone, how do you see this playing out? Just gut level, a gestalt of the future.
Yeah. No, I mean, there has to be a bifurcation coming here, right? I mean, this letting off of those that want to be in the cities. I mean, I'm very concerned about things like the graphene oxide in the food also, not just in shots.
Yeah, they're bombing everything with nanoparticles.
Right. I mean, it's in the foods. It's in the food supply, the processed foods. I mean, it's just a question of, look, we've watched them for decades putting this toxicities and spraying it into the air. People can't even see anymore what chemtrails are. They just look at the air and just go, oh yeah, it's just clouds. I'm like, no one remembers what clouds are supposed to look like. They assume that chemtrails are normal.
It's a dwindling spiral. The more they get poisoned, the more they get separated.
So they're normalizing it.
They're normalizing the poisoning that's taken place of decades. To the place of obviously the opioid epidemic. I mean, it's just depressing. It's depressing.
And why do they want to kill us? I guess it goes back to 2001. Arthur C. Clarke in Your Dad's Great Film. They just feel like they have to act as God and they have to cull us off. But they're the worst of us. It's like...
Yeah, but that's what I was saying before. These people are insane. They're psychopathic. I think spiritually they are bankrupt and
they're projecting their will to kill themselves onto us. How do we get them to look in the mirror and just kill themselves? I mean, I don't want Klaus Schwab to kill himself. I wish he'd wake up. But it's obviously he's too far gone. How do we get Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab to say, it's projection. You need to kill yourself?
Well, actually, I'd be quite satisfied if they just became ineffectual because everybody knew how evil they are. My terror is that I still see people going, Bill Gates is so wonderful, he cares about us, look at the effect, ignoring the fact that 500,000 children in India were maimed and paralyzed by his polio vaccine.
On record.
Yeah, and those gruesome photos of him squeezing God knows what into a little black baby's mouth made me want.
So do you think with their whole rollout, their lockdowns, their poison shot, they got what they want? Because I see it being rejected way worse than they thought it would. I think it's been a defeat for them. It's terrible for all the sick and dead people, but I don't see it going well for them, Sean.
It's not going well for them. At the same time, it's like what they do is they make their big push, and then they roll it back, to about 30% of what it was. And then it's just like, it's a gradualism, right? That's the whole point of progressivism. It's progressive takeover of humanity. And so this has been a 100-year plan, as we know, now that the place of digital currency, the digitization of everything. So the transhuman thing is inevitable. That's why even you mentioned about Elon Musk. It's like, well, he gets it. He's obviously doing the Neuralink. Do I think that he's evil? Is he trying to put in everyone? No, but I think he's playing, in a sense, he's playing with it because he knows.
Well, plus the technology's not bad. If I'm in a car wreck and paralyzed, I hope he invents something to give me my legs back.
Right.
We just don't want the software that controls us in it.
That's the point exactly. Is that if it's like if you lost your legs, of course you want to be able to replace it, but do we want to then ultimately be the robots that they are envisioning of as far as a transhuman thing where, oh, I'm going to genetically splice my child and alter my child and because that's going to make a perfect human. No, this doesn't work.
Which takes us back to childhood end and Arthur C. Clarke, a top illuminist, where, yeah, you're going to live forever, but you're going to give your body up and we're going to be controlled by us.
Well, I don't even think that they'll achieve it. I think that the technology will never be perfected because you're playing with nature, which is much more perfect, right? Nature understands things that this human alteration can't. So the more that we play God, as we know, it creates monstrosities, right? It's inevitable.
And then you can't say a man can't be a woman in the future when they claim, oh, he's uploaded his consciousness, Bob's still alive. If you say that's not really Bob in the computer, you're hurting his identity, you get arrested. But really, Bob didn't live eternally. The corporation sold him that, but it's a fraud.
I think it'll be a fraud. I don't think that you can take the human spirit and transmit and put it into a robot. I don't believe that.
Well, I've met with top globalists, and they admit that's their end game, is that we're going to live in computers and that we're going to have to accept that.
Yeah, to me, it won't work because the spirit is connected to the body.
Absolutely.
Natural physical experience.
It's an electrochemical machine that it's in.
Right, exactly.
And all we are is really an antenna to the dimensions. So this is just an antenna.
Right.
So they can't make the antenna. The antenna's just dialing in.
Yeah, no, even with the silicon machine or graphene oxide or whatnot, it's not going to be connected to spirit using exactly this biochemical
Or all
experience.
the ancient DNA that goes back as a continued electrical pulse, which is, I call it a time machine. We think of ourselves just being alive now, but all our ancestors go back. That's a genetic code time machining through space.
Yes.
And it's in an instant, it's one communication.
Right.
We'll be back with hour number 4, straight ahead. 2 more segments and Jade Hour takes over. Stay with us. But think about the power of that you were all your ancestors going back to the unknown eons, and you are the leading edge of all their consciousness and their will. And obviously their energy lives on in other dimensions, but we're not just conduits here personally now. We are part of a great genetic and psychic and spiritual and energetic trust.
Can I offer a little bit of a clue that maybe they can get into a machine? All right, now wait. So if any of you have watched paranormal shows, you'll see that there's all this extraordinary evidence of disembodied in another dimension communicating either as apparitions in front of people or when they're recorded. It's called electronic voice phenomena. So maybe they know a lot. We all know the CIA did like remote viewing, as did the KGB or whatever it was, training people to do remote viewing. So they obviously believe in spirit. So is it more to do with them defying God and wanting to be, more powerful, and they're going to demonstrate to God that they can like outperform him? Or are they actually taking something that's real, but because they're psychopaths and insane, they're doing something horrendous with it, which is like, No,
I agree. They're trying to be God.
Yeah, and they're inviting people to commit suicide, saying, hey, it'll be really great. You've got a really screwed up body. Well, you can upload your mind into this thing. And I just feel they're using that as a way for people to knock them,
to make their free will to go into that dimension. They're not even really in the machine, but that's more like an archetype and a symbol of them in a ritual agreeing to go with that energy.
Well, and to kill themselves, because this seems to be like the death cult of all death cults. They want to kill little babies. They want people to commit suicide.
What they don't want you to do is pass on your genetic information. Absolutely.
Why? Why?
Because they know it's going to end up creating something beautiful they can't stop.
Oh, yes, that is a good answer.
I mean, control is very much the end game, right, of what these sociopaths or psychopaths are after. They want to control this dimension completely. That's why I think we were talking about the poisoning of the environment, of, using the chemtrails, the chemicals, the heavy metals that are being sprayed, right?
It's an assault on the third dimension.
Well, it's an assault on the third dimension. Be able to basically, the more you can metallicize it, the more you can then broadcast whatever frequencies you want, like in They Live, right? Metallicize, yeah.
Yeah, that's what the nanotech is replicating in everybody.
Right.
They're putting the plugs into us. So Sean Stone, how do we beat them?
Get back to nature, connect to, detox your system, keep, clean out your mind and your body and your spirit, and just basically honor the creator, because that's it. This creation is of the creator, and we are all expressions of it, living expressions of it. So to honor ourselves and the spirit that emanates through us, that we are divine beings, to honor that is then to honor in others and to respect others. These beings, talking about sociopaths, they don't love themselves. so they don't love anyone else. You see, they don't have respect for themselves, so they don't respect anyone else. And that's why a lot of these things, a lot of these sexual perversions and stuff, as you know, from these elites, it's like they're all into like S&M kind of things. They want to be beaten, or they want children because they themselves are so, they hate themselves so much. They're so wretched inside. And it's a demonic energy, ultimately. It's such a low vibrational energy. So the more that we that are aware, awakening, can basically come into a place of more self-love, more self-awareness, more self-respect, then we respect others the same way, right?
Well, that's true. The revolution is us changing ourselves individually. That will change the world.
Absolutely.
And that's where you have to take responsibility for yourself, learn how to differentiate and examine and expect information that you're being told, and bother to see if there's grotesque contradictions. I mean, because that's part of their hypocrisy, is they accuse you of the very thing they're doing. I actually think that's a technique. But they try to force you to have an opinion that they give you. And if you're not on your guard, you may actually take on that opinion. It actually takes work to be a responsible being. You actually have to really go, wow, I'm not going to immediately jump when they say jump. I'm going to look at this, which is what I did when this whole COVID thing began. And by the way, I want to really acknowledge this. Alex, you and your guests, I would guess, saved millions of people by giving them the right information.
Let's talk about that, because the next attack's coming. Alex Jones here, back live. Final segment with our guest, Sean Stone, Vivian Kubrick, and then the great Jay Dyer, about a researcher of the New World Order. He takes over in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so. But yes, the audience, the crew, our guest, this whole operation deserves the credit. She was getting into that, of being the very tip of the spear, exposing the virus out of the lab, the lockdowns being a fraud, the poison shot, which is why it's so important we stay on air, this whole community. It's not about credit. It's about recognizing we've been right, and that they're trying to do new lockdowns, new injections, world IDs, global passports to travel, even leave your house. And so, Vivian, finish up your point.
Well, I think it's incredibly important, because this is what we're pushing back against, are the lies about InfoWars and the lies about Alex, is that Alex, his guests, his crew, everyone here have a mission to set humanity free and to get the people that are criminally crushing humanity, killing them at this point, culling them. You're not going to get the information that you need in order to protect yourself and to understand what's being done to you, probably from anywhere else that has such a vast audience as InfoWars. So I believe that, I know that when COVID happened, I just moved back from Florida to Texas, and I was just wobbling around. I wasn't paying attention. I walked into the supermarket and everything had gone. And I said, what's happened? And they said, haven't you heard about COVID? And I went, no. And I turned on Alex, and then immediately you were talking to Francis Boyle, Dr. Francis Boyle, Professor, Dr. whatever, Francis Boyle. And from the moment that you started reporting about it and having guests, you completely educated me. It let me go and find the documents myself. It let me think about what was going on. And then when I went to the supermarket and people were standing obediently 6 feet apart and having hysterics if anyone pulled their mask down, it gave me the freedom to observe what was happening instead of getting pulled into the hysteria. And the one thing they want people to be is hysterical and frightened and waiting for the next.
Well, that's right. Well, the enemy is, this is our real brain trust with our guests and the whole family, is that we did dead on 100% nail what they were doing from previous research, which shows we can beat them again when they try it again. But that wasn't us. That was just studying the globalists who think we're so dumb. They admit, why do the globalists admit, Sean Stone, so much what they're going to do before they do it?
Predictive programming, because I think there's two aspects. You touch upon this a lot, where everything has to be disclosed at some level, right? There has to be a certain level of transparency, even if people don't believe it, right? Because if sometimes you say, hey, I'm going to punch you, and then you actually do it, people still don't believe it. They say, no, wait a minute, that must have been something else. But there is this sort of spiritual law around revealing things, and then there is the predictive programming, which you could say is also designed to get people to respond the way you want them to respond, right? So you put out movies like that Soderbergh film that was ridiculously bad about the pandemic, right? That was done a few years ago. What was the name of it? Do you remember? Soderbergh made it with anyway with Jude Law and all his people, and this how the CDC is racing to save everyone from this deadly new virus. And
oh yeah, they even had a movie right before it came out that showed it. Yeah.
Well, it came out a few years ago, and then the point was that like when the lockdown started, all these people were going, oh, it's trending on Netflix. Everyone's gonna watch this movie again, you know, because it's basically telling you how they want you to respond, they want you to perceive the CDC as the savior. They want you to perceive the government as the good guys, right? And that's a lot of the films in general that we've seen across time, right? It's like consistently this idea of, you know, the good guys and, you know, in the UN or whatever, and, you know, in the good CIA, and then like there's a one rogue bad CIA guy, but the CIA in general is good, right? I mean, this is the same narrative that gets pushed across over and over to just get people to really be docile, in a sense, to not think for themselves, to not realize that the government is not their friend, and has you know, again, has become this behemoth. You know what's interesting about the federal government? It's about 40% of our GDP. Do you realize how much what that means to our reality? The federal government is 40% of our GDP as a nation. Think about that. And like all this spending, all the military-industrial complex, so-called, but it's everything. It's pharma. It's everything is getting money from the government.
And so, in closing, let me raise that the big front and center threat is Zelensky. I don't like the Russians invading. I'm not choosing a side, but NATO started the war. They overthrew the government 8 years ago. We all know that. Your dad made great films exposing it way before, predicting it would all happen. But now they fire a missile 100 miles out of bounds. I say it's a anti-aircraft missile. They later confirm it, and the Pentagon says it doesn't matter. It's still Russia's fault. And Zelensky calls for Article 5 to be invoked and NATO to attack Russia, which will lead to nuclear war. These people are out of their minds.
Yeah, well, we know this. I mean, why haven't they gone for peace? I mean, the point was that we could have had a peace deal pretty quickly during, you know, right after the invasion. There was opportunity for peace, and Zelensky and company pulled out, right? And the U.S. has not pushed for peace since that time. So here, you know, even Russell Brand is making fun of Biden, going, this guy is sitting there like an old man on the side of the porch going, you know, if we stay on this course, there's going to be a nuclear war. And it's like, why don't you do something about it? Maybe move towards peace. Why don't you? They're insane.
And people take it as a Russian loss. They got 100,000 dead troops, reportedly 100,000 dead Ukrainians. No, this is a real giant war in Europe. This has got to stop.
I mean, without question, war is slaughter. War is what they need when they want to create chaos and do more controlling, and another way to disguise the central bankers and their incredible, irresponsible debt ocean that they've created for mankind, and they want to keep hold of control. So that's why they're going to try and bring in that central bank digital currency, which will be a control system that I think would be the closest thing to being driven insane by how you have no more freedom anymore, unless you're willing to sort of run around the woods and spear rabbits and live in a tree or something.
No.
And even then, they'll probably like send a drone and put a bullet in your head. By the way, I just want to really say it again, expand on this. You've got to teach yourself about the technology of PSYOPs, because unless you understand how it works, you're going to be vulnerable to it. And there are certainly many places that you can find information about PSYOPs. But if you also look at the history of psychiatry and Edward Bernays and the ways in which spies are taught how to be spies, you're going to understand more about how you're being manipulated so that you can catch it when it happens. I mean, most of us are kind and good-hearted people. So
well, that's right. If you're not aware that there's a war on for your mind, you're basically going to lose.
That's right. That's right.
Exactly. Which is another reason why InfoWars is so incredibly important.
Well, I appreciate you guys. What I'm happy about is I see so many great new talk show hosts and other talk show hosts really waking up that now, you know, because Sean's been doing this forever, so have I. You obviously been awake a long time, Vivian, but there's so many new people popping up. I don't think their attempt to shut this down is going to work.
No, it's like every time they take one out, 100 are born and metastasizes, right? And that's the beauty of this thing. It's like the more that, we censor 1,000, you know, you end up with, look at Rumble and BitChute have popped up ever since YouTube started banning, you know, conspiracy theorists, right? So it's just the inevitability of human consciousness that the more they try to target and censor, the more it actually leads to more people waking up and going, hey, maybe Kyrie is right, you know, maybe Kanye is right?
And that's the key is evil always loses. And it doesn't mean we're perfect in our resistance to it, but we're trying to be good, trying to find a real future for everybody. And we're not going to be happy until we do that. Sean, you've got best-selling books, you've got films, everything. How do people find all your great work?
Absolutely. SeanStone.info. That's the best place to go. Best Kept Secret is a must-watch docuseries. If you want to talk about PSYOPs, it's in there.
And your book about the Anglo-American establishment couldn't be out at a better time.
The New World Order is available. I think you guys have it too from InfoWars, and everything is available through SeanStone.info.
And Vivian, you're quite the enigma. I mean, I've been a big fan of your dad. Before I ever met you, I knew you worked on a lot of his films and the music for Full Metal Jacket. Getting to know you in the last 15 years has been great. And so I'm very honored that you come on my show and Sean's show. Isn't that about it? Yeah.
Sorry, what?
I mean, how many shows do you do? You only go on a few shows.
No, I think I can count it on one hand, and most of it is with you.
Well, we're very honored. We're very honored to have you. Jay Dyer is about to take over. Vivian, 30-second closing comment.
Just that if you want to find me, I'm on Gab at VIKU1111. So VIKU1111.
And next time you're on, hopefully come on soon, we'll put the lower third up. Say it one more time. People are going to be calling us. How do they find you?
I'm on Gab because I got chucked off Twitter for saying that COVID was 97.7% non-lethal. Although I now recently got a letter saying that I'll never be allowed back on because I broke too many rules, and they're never going to speak to me again, and they're never going to answer my emails.
Well, they sure taught you.
Yeah.
Now you're on the air reaching probably 3 million people watching right now. So Vivian Kubrick, search her on Gab. All right, the great Jay Dyer takes over straight ahead. Sean Stone, Vivian Kubrick, thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Owen Schroyer comes up in 45 minutes.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm your guest host, Jay Dyer of Jay's Analysis. As I was listening to Vivian and Sean give their analysis of the way that we understand how the global power structure works, I was really happy to hear them referring to organized crime and the structure of organized crime. I gave an interview this week on one of the largest true crime channels on YouTube, Sean Atwood. Shout out to Sean Atwood. We had a whole 30-minute discussion of the history of organized crime, how that ties into the assassination of JFK, most likely. That's one of the prevalent theories that seems to have the most evidence behind it. Of course, I think there's other power players as well behind the assassination of JFK, including intelligence agencies, including foreign governments, as well as organized crime and the mob. And I wanted to review a little bit of that because that's one of the first things I discussed in the fourth hour 2 years ago on the Alex Jones Show, having been hosting the fourth hour now for 2 years, a little over 2 years. Because this week it was big news, this huge dynamic scandal, bigger than Enron now, right? This FTX Sam Bankman-Fried scandal. And the more that you dig into this crazy rabbit hole, what you find out is that not only was this, a big scam and they were stealing money, it was also funneled $40 million to the Democratic Party for Biden. And we noticed that FTX as a platform popped up, out of nowhere, seemingly about 3 years ago. And of course, there were already large crypto exchanges that already existed, like Binance, Coinbase. And then we have this sudden emerging thing on the scene with the face of the quasi-autistic, Afro-minded man-boob figure of Sam Bankman-Fried, who's supposedly this genius that nobody, he's way beyond everybody. He sleeps on a beanbag in his office, and he's got floppy hair, and he just happens to be best friends with Bill Clinton, and they're so close, and it's just all going to be wonderful with all this crypto. And then what do we know? Shocker. It's a big, huge, bigger than Enron scam. And he's still tweeting. He's still trying to explain himself as this altruistic billionaire who wants to give all of his money away as he lives together with a goblin-faced creature, supposedly his, quote, girlfriend, that they all sleep together in a giant orgy with 10 people living in an apartment complex. I mean, come on. Does anybody really believe that this guy was running this? Well, it turns out, as if you listen to BitBoy's interviews, BitBoy has dug really deep into this. I think Owen had BitBoy on, and they talked about the background to this whole scandal. And over on BitBoy's channel, he's gone into depth with other people who, this Friedberg character who was involved in a famous early 2000s online poker scam. And so it seems like they sort of recruited in these people who had a history of running high-level scams. And this was pumped up to the nth degree with all of these Hollywood people, all of these stars, all these famous people pointing out how amazing FTX was, the FTX token, all this stuff. And it was, and people are shocked at how fraudulent and fake all of this is turning out to be. Yes, there you go. Would you like to join these two in a round of coitus? I know everybody's tempted in the audience. Try to hold back your temptation there. Let's go take a cold shower real quick if you need to, if you're giving in to your base passions right now. But I'm just joking. This is no shocker, because as I'm listening to everybody talking about, it's a Ponzi scheme, it's a rug pull, there's nothing behind the tokens, it's fiat, they're taking all the money. That's exactly how the Federal Reserve works. It's like everybody's shocked at well, wait till you find out that the Federal Reserve is the same scam system. It's a giant rug pull Ponzi scheme. And if you go back, Creature from Jekyll Island, if you go back to Woodrow Wilson, Colonel Edwin Mandel House, who was the UK banking elite agent who helped get all that legislation through, who helped promote Woodrow Wilson setting up and weaponizing the Federal Reserve System, which, by the way, is part of the Communist Manifesto. If you didn't know, you might think that communists don't like bankers, but in fact, if you remember, we did a whole breakdown of this famous book. No, in fact, communism has always had billionaire funding, as did fascism. Fascism has the exact same history as Professor Anthony Sutton has shown in his books. So it also turns out that there seems to be connections to MIT, the background of FTX, people at MIT, people in the finance department, people connected to some of those Epstein departments, it turns out, have these. And why is that? Well, because this is a giant Ponzi scheme, a giant scam intended precisely to funnel people's money offshore. And again, if you are shocked by this, I can't stress how shocking it is to you to understand that the dollar is the same. You understand that they're doing the same thing with your tax money, with the dollar, especially when it moved off of the gold standard. But even prior to that, Dr. Carol Quigley, everybody knows all to hold up the books. Right? It's just basically a show and tell book program over here in the 4th hour with me, your librarian nerd who does your homework for you. Dr. Carol Quigley talks about how the banker notes were always a fiat scam going back hundreds of years. And they would print up more notes and flood the society with notes beyond the actual gold holdings that they had. And that was part of this gold note scam. And so the same thing is the model for the central bank that was set up throughout the central banks, I should say, set up throughout Europe, throughout the 1800s and the 1900s. And that became the model for the Bank for International Settlements, which is the World Reserve Bank of World Reserve Banks, the Federal Reserve of Federal Reserves. It's the central Federal Reserve Bank of the world Federal Reserve banking system. They all are connected to that hub. And most people don't know about this by design, on purpose. And that's why it occupies a central section of Carol Quigley's Strategy and Hope, as well as a few other people who seem to have picked up on this over the years. A few economists and a few people have written on this, but for the most part, people just are mystified, and they think it's like this big onion layered scam of all of these different, economics, so the GDP and the jobs report and the this report and the that report, and it's all a bunch of mystery and smoke and mirrors. And guess what? Guess what's behind all that smoke and mirrors? Well, it's not stacks of gold at Fort Knox, right? It's FTT scam tokens. It's the exact same thing. So if you're mad about FTX, or if you think that, crypto's a scam, it's not a scam. Many cryptos are scams. But you understand, this has nothing to do, for example, with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the preeminent inflation, it's the hardest asset. It's completely inflationary resistant, because it has the fixed number of coins that can never be inflated beyond the fixed number when the last Bitcoin is mined. And so it's extremely rare. And for that reason, it is not like these kinds of proof of stake coins that are all just printed out of thin air. These are all, again, literally modeled on the Federal Reserve System, on the Enron style scam system, on the coming carbon scam system. When they roll out the carbon credits and the carbon tokens and the carbon-based cryptos, those are already starting to roll out. Guess what? They're the exact same model as FTX and all of the other collapsed scam models. Terra Luna, that collapsed, 3 or 4 months ago? Exact same scam model, exact same rug pull, exact same. You can earn 30% by staking your coins, and it's just printed out of nowhere. That's all the scam stolen money, right? And they're gambling with your money that you put on the exchange. Don't go anywhere. This is the Alex Jones Show. I'm your guest host, Jay Dyer of Jay's Analysis. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm your guest host, Jay Dyer of Jay's Analysis. I want to remind you, if you notice there on screen, you'll see that second box there. It's one of my biggest interviews I've done to date, and that is with Colonel Douglas Macgregor, who was Trump's pick for national security advisor. He did not get that post that was blocked. I think that involved Mitch McConnell, if I recall. But Colonel Macgregor is a frequent guest on Tucker Carlson. You may have seen him or heard of him. And we did a full hour breakdown of everything from the Great Reset to FTX scam token, Sam Bankman-Fried style Federal Reserve stuff, to the Ukraine situation, Russia, et cetera. It was an amazing interview. It's, again, one of the biggest I've done to date. Be sure and go to my YouTube channel and check that out. It's getting a lot of attention, a lot of good feedback. So if you're looking for a deeper breakdown from a high-profile individual, definitely go check that out. And also, I would add to today, I'm going to be uploading. We had earlier in the last hour, Alex had the children of two of the most famous directors. I just did an interview with one of the other most famous directors' son, Andrei Tarkovsky Jr. So if you're familiar with Tarkovsky's films, and the amazing art that he put out over the years, films like Stalker, films like Solaris, films like Rublev, sort of capturing the history and the essence of Eurasia and Russia, especially in art and iconography. We went really deep into the breakdown of Andre Jr.'s documentary that he put out. It's now at the Criterion Collection. Cinema Prayer, about his father, about Andrei Tarkovsky. So Tarkovsky, of course, being hugely influential as well in the global film scene, influencing many filmmakers in the West, in Hollywood as well. And so you definitely want to check that out. I'll be premiering that on my channel this week as well. It's also already available on my Rockfin channel. So if you're looking for information like that, that's a little edgier, a little sooner than other stuff, you can subscribe to me over on Rockfin. I think Greg Reese is maybe coming over to Rockfin as well. Paul Joseph Watson's on Rockfin too. So a lot of cool stuff over there. We were talking about this scam model, how the scams work. And these scams are structured in the way that a lot of intelligence agencies have structured secret societies and cells over the years. And so if we think about how, for example, organized crime set up the secret societies that they had, we go back to Sicily in the 1800s, 1700s. This is the origin of the omerta, which is a secret oath, a death oath that you make to your Don, to the Don of the local. At that time, it was a militia, but the militias are actually, the local militias is where we get the idea of the Sicilian mafia. Now, when a lot of the immigrants came over to the U.S., they didn't find a lot of help with the existing local police, so naturally they would continue their model of local neighborhood militia, and that's where we get the ideas of the Don and this kind of stuff. But the omerta, this secret ritual, which is actually a copy from certain Masonic rituals and Masonic groups out of Italy, known as the Carbonari, they copied this, and that's because one of the early Italian revolutionaries his name was Garibaldi. He was influenced by Giuseppe Mazzini, who was one of the most famous. There you go, exactly. This is the omerta scene in Sopranos. And I'm sure if you've never seen The Sopranos, I highly recommend checking it out because there's a lot of gabagool, a lot of gabagool, a lot of Gumars, and a lot of Goombas up in The Sopranos. But it's a great show. We did a whole 2-hour breakdown of that show, by the way, if you're looking for a great podcast, getting into all the really insightful elements in that show, including, there's the omerta right there, where you burn the image of the saint. And you sort of take a blood oath. But there's also references to, the tie-in with organized crime and intelligence agencies. There's references to the CIA, to Tony having to at times collude with the FBI. All of that comes up in that show consistently throughout. Again, I think one of the best TV shows ever made, honestly. But it's instructive again because, as you heard Vivian, I think, mention in the last hour, the organized crime model is really the best way to understand how the global elites run things. Now, this may sound like, oh yeah, of course, there's organized crime. Yeah, we all know that. But people just still can't figure out there's this block in their head, this roadblock between there being organized crime and global organized crime. They just cannot figure this out. They cannot figure out that giant pharmaceutical corporations operate like organized crime. They can't figure out that giant international banking institutions operate like organized crime. Now, we just had a giant institution that collapsed. Guess what? It's operating on an organized crime model. And it's not run by nerdy dude with an afro. Okay? He's the face of that. He's the front of that. And the front people, they take the fall. And the media right now is running cover for him. Mainstream media is running cover for Sam Bankman. Oh, he's altruistic. It's not his fault. It's all these other people. Well, yeah, maybe he's just a front man, but they're covering up because they know it shows that the giant establishment, leftist, especially Democratic Party system is a big scam, and it totally exposes all that. And it exposes that because it's kind of always been that way, all right? And I'm not saying that the Republican Party doesn't have a bunch of phonies and con artists as well. I mean, they're basically the same party for the most part, right? Except for a few outliers and people that, people on this broadcast all know about. For the most part, these people are all part of the same big scam. And crypto was just one of those easier ways to kind of mask the scammery by selling people on the idea that the Federal Reserve model of fiat system, let's just put that into crypto and do the exact same thing where we can print up infinite amounts of digits on the screen and just say, oh yeah, well, there's a zillion FTT token, and we'll just keep inflating the price of the fake coin. And as people invest, they will take the investor's money and put it into his own betting and investments. And, again, it's obvious that this is just the exact same model of the Federal Reserve scam debt-based system applied to the crypto world. And the whole point of Bitcoin itself, Bitcoin, which had nothing to do with any of these things, none of these scams. Bitcoin it exists to fight that model. That's its purpose. So, I think a lot of people kind of, we were open to the possibility of where Ethereum might go. Ethereum was for many, many years based on this idea of proof of work like Bitcoin model. And then it recently switched to, quote, proof of stake and admitted to the censoring. So Tornado Cash, these other recent scandals in the domain of Ethereum have proven that Ethereum is now part of global coin. In fact, Klaus even says he likes it now. He likes the Ethereum. We will go over the Ethereum. So while we might have withheld judgment and been open to the possibility, now it's gone into full on. It's part of, apparently, it seems like it wants to go in the direction of Klaus coin, global coin, because now they're willing to admit censoring when they're requested to censor at the node level. And that's not what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is not that, you see. So it's different. So a lot of people who don't know about this sector, they kind of class it all together. And every time there's a shakeout, it's because it's all a scam. It's not all a scam. That's why all of these other coins are not modeled like Bitcoin is modeled, right? And so, again, it sort of vindicates Max Kaiser in a way, right? Max Kaiser, Bitcoin. Bitcoin is vindicated because it's all the Bitcoin people, right? Michael Saylor, Max Kaiser, who had been saying for the last year that these entities are going to start collapsing. You're going to see this Three Arrows Capital. You're going to see Voyager. You're going to see Terra Luna. You're going to see, because the same model had been done in the past through exchanges like Mt. Gox, which got hacked many years ago. BitConnect was another one of these Ponzi scams that collapsed based on paying people out money tokens made out of thin air, basically. So these are all just scam models. That's all I'm trying to say. And that doesn't mean that everybody or everything in crypto is a scam. That's why it wasn't about Bitcoin. It was about everything but Bitcoin, you see. And most of the global elites don't like Bitcoin openly, right? Bill Gates, I wish we never had Bitcoin, right? Hillary, get rid of Bitcoin. They all do not like that because that's one of the ones that they can't control because it's actually decentralized. These other ones are completely centralized and are based on the print out of thin air scam debt model. That is the Federal Reserve model. And that's why this was all promoted for the last 3 years with zillions of dollars by all these Democrats and all these, Wall Street, CNBC people to pump this up because it was a scam. You're talking about the structures of large-scale scammery, large-scale deception, large-scale financial bamboozlery, and particularly the Federal Reserve System is kind of actually pretty much the same as the FTX collapse scandal system. So there's been a lot of these, as we pointed out. And the reason I was bringing in organized crime is that one thing organized crime got pretty adept at, and is, I guess, still pretty adept at, is financial scammery. So we often think of, mobsters or organized crime as, being involved in a little bit of sanitation. I gotta take out the dead body, take out a little bit of the trash, gabagoo. No, but that's not all they do. Organized crime is also involved pretty heavily in large-scale financial scammery. And that actually comes up throughout The Sopranos as well. There's many episodes where Tony gets involved in a big-scale gentrification HUD type of scam, right? And that's referenced, I think, in season 1 or 2. Very similar to the stuff that Catherine Austin Fitts had investigated, amazingly. And there's a couple other episodes where, Tony gets involved in these high-level financial scams that at one point, he sets up a front thing that has to do with stock scams, right, and stock trading and whatnot. And he puts a couple guys running this, and that works for a little while and makes maybe a few $1 million, something like that. And so, but those are models on a micro scale for what big scale scammers do on a macro scale. And it's just amazing to me that, people can figure this out at the local level. They can figure it out that maybe even their governor at a state level, maybe even the president or some government official is involved in a scam. But they can't figure it out beyond these goofy public official people. As if there aren't billionaires involved in scams. As if there aren't people, like FTX scale people, multi-billion-dollar scams. Now, everybody knows about Enron, everybody knows about Bernie Madoff, and now everybody knows about FTX, but do you think that that's it? Like that's the only scams that go on, or that's the only deception that goes on? You don't think that it goes on at the level of the Federal Reserve? Doesn't go on to the level of the Bank for International Settlements? What about the level of Davos and the World Economic Forum? Could they possibly be involved in economic scammery? Or do you think that they're all altruistic people who want to help you, like Sam Bankman-Fried? Are they just sweet, nice people? They care about your health. They want you to be happy and healthy, while they also want you to not be around. Right? I mean, how can people not figure this out? I'm mystified by this. And so the point of this is that, well, how do we understand Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX and then the Democratic Party connection there? Well, it's like mafia. It's like organized crime. You got to work for the big boys. We'll promote you on the global stage for the next 3 years. Sam, come work for us. You be the nerdy tech face of crypto, because presumably from the psychological warfare vantage point, from the market research, the only people into crypto are nerds. So you're the face of it. Maybe other Silicon Valley companies with nerdy face people are the same, you think? You think maybe? Maybe something like Facebook is something like, I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. What do you think? Think about this. Maybe this is a model for other things. I don't know. And then you do what we say. However, if things go sour, maybe you don't pay your dues. What happens? Well, you take the fall. You're the fall guy. You're the man that is the face of this, and you're the one that caused all this. Maybe we'll run a little interference for you for the mainstream media, and we'll try to say that you're just this autistic genius savant nerd guy. But no, ultimately, right? This guy might take the fall, as if it's just one guy. And that's another lie the system's always propping up, right? Like, oh, it's just this one dude. It's one. We got one bad apple over here. We'll root the bad apples. As if this is not a gigantor scam with obviously a lot of high-level connections. But of course, the high-level people, the Dons, not Don Trump, the Dons, the Don in the sense of the mob Don, right? The structure of the mafia, if you didn't know this, the reason that it was so successful for many decades in the 30s, 40s, and 50s was a cell model where a lot of the foot soldiers, they didn't actually know who was running things. They might know about the Don, but they might not even meet him very much, right? So they don't really know. It's compartmentalized. It's a cell structure, and it was so successful and hard to bust because a lot of the soldiers, they would interact with the bosses, but the boss alone interacted with the Don. And so that's one way, one model by which this type of thing was so successful, and that's also portrayed throughout The Sopranos as well. Because remember, Tony's not really a Don. Tony is a boss, right? And he's got soldiers under him, but Tony has to interact with and deal with the Dons of the 5 families, right? So it's every now and then he has to drive over to New York and talk to the various Dons. But Tony's not exactly at that level. He's sort of below that. And so he's, oftentimes having to get Christopher, the main foot soldier throughout the series, to go and do all these operations and run all this stuff. And so, but Christopher has to pay, right, his cut, right? When he gets made, if you remember, in the show, that comes with new responsibilities, right? So Christopher, his whole life, he lacks this father figure. He looks up to Tony. Tony plays this father figure role. When he finally gets made from, being just sort of a thug to a made man with status, it comes with all these responsibilities, and now he has to give you even more money, right? He owes more money. He has to do more scammery, more operations to bring Tony a bigger cut. So all what he thought was all this power and prestige and honor was actually just even further signing his soul over to the devil. And that's actually a big part of the show where over time, Christopher starts to realize that he's basically made a deal with the devil. And this ends up in him having an after-death or near-death experience, right, where he gets shot and he sees himself in hell. Right? And he relates this, midway throughout the show. Anyway, the point is just that this is the model for understanding how the elite in our day run things on a grander scale. It's the exact same. And that was the point Vivian Kubert was making in the previous hour. So hopefully everybody caught that. And, Sean Stone was making the same point with secret societies and spies and spy networks and all of that. It's the same stuff with this, right, with organized crime. And, that's what this is, controlling the black markets, right? Brzezinski, he made that famous comment that it wasn't just a matter of, in terms of geopolitics, controlling legitimate markets. It was also necessary to control the black markets. That's a big part of controlling things on the geopolitical grand chessboard, running black markets as well. And so this is where you get into, a lot of the dark stuff that everybody's heard about and that has come out in the last several years, right, in regarding international black market type stuff. And this also relates to elections. If you remember, and this is all everybody's talking about this in the last week because of the midterm elections, and it's sort of like you can't talk about election fraud or scammery. You're not supposed to talk about that, even though that is a fact of history. So facts of history, and it's even well known that the U.S. has employed certain people to fix elections in other countries for the last 60, 70, 80 years. There's people who are fixers who go for intelligence agencies and go and fix elections. I think Roger Stone even did a whole breakdown of who fixed elections in other countries and might have been involved in fixing the previous presidential election. There was a big famous essay that Roger Stone did some 2 or 3 years ago on that very thing, pointing this out. This kind of should be well known, but no, you can't even mention that. So as the world government is put into place, as gigantic financial scam institutions collapse, you can't talk about it, and you're bad if you do, but also it's not that bad, right? So for years and years and years, there was no global government. You're bad if you mention that. You're crazy. And by the way, there is a global government, and it's a good thing. And if you don't like it, it's because you're a bigot and you're small-minded. So it's just gaslighting. Just like, half of my videos on YouTube have the Great Reset warning from Wikipedia, the New World Order warning from Wikipedia. And it went viral on Twitter this week that as you talk about the global government summit that's going on, there's a warning pops up to tell you that this is disinformation and conspiracy theory, that there's a global government summit as it is going on. Amazingly. That is Orwell, that is gaslighting. And hopefully everybody can recognize this. Hopefully everybody has enough common sense and enough IQ points left to figure that out, what's staring everybody in the face. This is the Alex Jones Show. Don't go anywhere. This is Jay Dyer of Jay's Analysis. Follow me on YouTube, follow me on social media, and also support Alex in the store.